Figure TV. Revolutionary salute. Revolutionary salute. Like, share, subscribe. Welcome to the House of Revolution. Well, I'm your humble host. You know the y'all mean the revolution. And I got some late breaking news. The revolutionaries can use. The curse of P. Diddy begins. Mayor Eric Adams indicted. Before we get into that, be sure to wipe your feet. That means hit the like button. Like, share, subscribe, support the platform, y'all. Well, I'm here, y'all. Better late than never. Court figure is just getting back home, and revolution is a way of life. So I don't mind going live late at night and giving y'all daily dose of geopolitical information. I owe y'all that. So let's get right to it tonight. The fall of Mayor Eric Adams, who called himself the bad boy of politics.
Key to the city from the bad boy of politics. I want to thank y'all for this honor and just recognizing me being from New York, giving me the key to the city. Diddy finally has the key to the city.
Diddy gave that boy up, man. That's the first record.
Big breaking news tonight. For the first time in the history of New York City, a sitting mayor has been indicted for crimes. ABC News reporting that Mayor Eric Adams has been indicted by a federal grand jury. We do not know yet the exact charges. Federal authorities have been investigating Adams and members of his staff, issuing subpoenas for documents and cell phones. Several members of administration have resigned, some of them also friends of Mayor Adams. Again, Eric Adams, the 110th mayor of New York, has been indicted by a federal grand jury.
Well, breaking news, guys. Mayor Eric Adams of New York has just been indicted by the Southern District of New York. This is the same district, the same U.S. attorneys who are going after Diddy. And I find it so interesting that he is the one who gave Diddy the keys of the city of New York City last year. And then all this craziness has started. But we are seeing more people fall. Now, this doesn't relate to Diddy directly, at least not yet. But we know him and Mayor Adams are very close.
And this nigga just became a 33rd degree grand Freemason. That couldn't even save him. They just were celebrating that for this man. That couldn't even save him.
But let me give you the details and just give you all these little snippets. And then I also want to show you that he is supposed to surrender himself tomorrow. I actually have that document that I'm going to pull up and show you. So let's get into this story. Wow. Eric Adams has been charged by federal prosecutors in Manhattan, a stunning blow to the first-term mayor who once proclaimed himself the future of the Democratic Party. The precise charges are not publicly known, as the indictment.
He was the future of the Democratic Party until he got into it with Joe Biden about them goddamn migrants. Now they teaching him a lesson, and Diddy gave him a little evidence.
Remains under seal. The indictment caps a year of deepening legal and political peril for the city's second Black leader, rewriting the story of his first campaign for City Hall and casting a pall over his bid for a second term. In the past 2 weeks, Adams has lost his top legal advisor, his police commissioner, his school chancellor, and his health commissioner. The move from prosecutors working for Damian Williams, again, that is the U.S. attorney going after Diddy, the U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, comes just weeks after his office executed a series of raids on top aides of the Adams administration, including 2 deputy mayors and the police commissioner at the time, many of whom have close and personal relationships with the mayor. And so they're giving live updates. And just so you know, it's all stemming around him taking foreign money. All right. And I'll get back to that, but let me show you the actual, like, where he is actually supposed to surrender. This is Inner City Press. They do great work. He did a lot of great work on Diddy and in many other cases, because if you know, in federal court and in the Southern District of New York, you are not allowed to have cameras in the courtroom. So everything has to be done old school. That's what they have sketches, and they have to have reporters that go in there and actually take notes. They do not allow cameras, but he's great at keeping people abreast on what's going going on, and even giving kind of like a light transcript of what is said in court. But he has here, well, if this does happen, we'll be there in the Southern District of New York live tweet it. But this is the tweet he's responding to. The city council's Republican minority leader has deleted this tweet posted a few minutes ago. Just to be clear, the mayor's office did not send out this schedule for tomorrow. His office hasn't sent out any schedule for tomorrow yet. And usually that schedule is already out. But he has no schedule. But this is the document. Eric Adams to surrender to the feds. This is a deleted tweet. And this is from the New York City mayor's press office. So it looks like this came out and then they just, I don't know what happened. But Wednesday, September 24th at 9:01 p.m. This is to Spencer Pete. The public schedule for Mayor Eric Adams for Thursday, September 26, 2024. But it says here, press schedule, approximately 9:30 a.m., surrenders to federal authorities on a 26 count indictment. They literally have his thing. Now it says at approximately 4:45 p.m., he is going to resign from office. This is insane. He has been investigated for some time now. There's been rumblings of things. He was very disgruntled that he didn't get to be at the didn't get to speak at the Democratic National Convention. People were avoiding him, and many believe, or he believes. Okay, in fact, let me take you to his statement, and then we're gonna get into why he believes this and then why he's being targeted. You know, he believes he's being targeted. So we're gonna get his statement and then also get into a little bit more details on what's happening.
My fellow New Yorkers, it is now my belief that the federal government intends to charge me with crimes. If so, these charges will be entirely false, based on lies. But they would not be surprising. I always knew that if I stood my ground for all of you, that I would be a target. And a target I became.
Wow, you Trump.
For months, leaks and rumors have been aimed at me in an attempt to undermine my credibility and paint me as guilty. Just this past week, they searched the home of our new police commissioner, looking for documents from 20 years ago, just 1 week after he joined my administration. Enough. I will fight these injustices with every ounce of my strength and my spirit. If I'm charged, I know I am innocent. I will request an immediate trial so the New Yorkers can hear the truth. New Yorkers know my story. They know where I come from. I have been fighting injustice my entire life.
That's a lie.
That fight has continued as your mayor. Despite our pleas, the federal government did nothing as its broken immigration policies overloaded our shelter system with no relief. I put the people of New York before.
Say that did it though. That's when they, and then you know what's so crazy? Because he wrong for being a shoe shiner, the buck dancer, but when he stood up for the people of New York and said, wait a minute, enough of this migrant shit, his ass getting indicted for that. That's so it want black people did happen with Dr. King. You see, once you in, this fuck the mafia. Once you in with them, ain't no getting out. Or this is what's gonna happen to you. If you try to break away from the system, this is your reward. Never get down with them.
And politics. Now, if I am charged, many may say I should resign because I cannot manage the city while fighting the case. I can also understand how everyday New Yorkers will be concerned that I cannot do my job while I face accusation. But I have been facing these lies for months since I began to speak out for all of you and their investigation started. Yet the city has continued to improve. Make no mistake, you elected me to lead this city.
Break the oath, nigga. This dude just became a Freemason 2 weeks ago, and it was all over the newspaper. Break the oath, nigga. Say yourself. Tell the people what happened. What's been really going on in the dirty politics? You can do that, but he really scared.
And lead it, I will. I humbly ask for your prayers and your patience as we see this through. God bless you, and God bless the city of New York. Thank
Our prayers,
you.
sir.
Prayers, nigga.
Sir,
You
really?
sound-
And New York City has improved. It's in the worst state it's ever been with this migrant crisis. Remember when you were so excited for the migrants to come there and you welcomed them with open arms? Guys, I'm gonna get into that in another video. This is very late. I just want to break this news. But again, this is what he's saying, and he's been targeted by the Biden administration, by the Democratic Party, because he was complaining about the migrant crisis.
Yep.
And you know, this is an election.
They start calling him the Black Donald Trump. That was it for him. He should have knew the handcuffs was coming in, bro.
Year, they did not like him being vocal and speaking out.
You the mayor of New York, nigga. You trying to flip New York red? They're not having that.
Against these migrants that have taken up billions of dollars from the taxpayers and have essentially decimated business and the economy in New York City, and where a lot of communities, especially Black and brown communities, have been overrun by illegal immigrants taking away resources. And it has just become untenable. New York is not the same New York. I was actually in New York. I've been to New York several times over the past couple of years, and it has fallen down. It has become like you go to Times Square. I mean, Times Square is usually crazy, but it's all you see are migrants in the streets crowded with people who you could tell are not just visitors, right? And it's not that we're against anyone coming over here as an immigrant, but it's the illegal migrants that have come to the United States. And it's so crazy. They wanted all of these illegal immigrants, illegal migrants, whatever way you want to call that, illegal aliens, and they wanted them to come and wanted to criticize anyone who spoke out against it, say that you are, you're a racist, you're this, you're some type of phobic and if you do not want them to come over here, if you do not want them taking over the resources of your city. So it is very interesting that he is coming against the current administration, including Kamala Harris, because she was the border czar, is the border czar currently. So now let me show you this next thing. And this is where there's other people that have been calling on him to resign. AOC is one of those in particular, which I find really crazy because she's the main person that thinks, she's at the point where she thinks citizens should be able to walk over here, and be handed credit cards, be given the keys to the city, just like Diddy, and be able to vote. She has been one of the most vocal proponents of these illegal migrants, illegal immigrants. And now suddenly she wants him to resign as well because he spoke out against this. But the reason why he's unpopular in New York right now, people don't like him because of that. But let me take you to that video.
We are going to bring you now more news, more New York officials calling on Mayor Eric Adams to resign here because of all of this. I want to put this up. You see there from the New York Times that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said Eric Adams should resign as mayor of New York City for the good of the city because she becomes the most prominent Democrat to push for his ouster amid federal corruption investigations involving his administration. So AOC says this: I do not see how Mayor Adams can continue governing New York City. The flood of resignations and vacancies are threatening government function. Nonstop investigations will make it impossible to recruit and retain a qualified administration. That's just part of her statement there on social media. Linda Schmidt has the news statement. Mayor Eric Adams firing back at AOC here. We have it. Let's take that live here. Let's take that full. This is how Mayor Adams is responding to this, saying for anyone who self-righteously claims people charged with serious crimes should not be in jail, to now say that the second Black mayor of New York should resign because of rumors and innuendo without even a single charge being filed is the height of hypocrisy. I am leading this city to protect it from exactly that kind of phony politics. The people of this city elected me to fight for them, and I will stay and fight no matter what. Okay, we are getting some breaking news in right now. This is quite something. Okay, this is coming to us from the New York Times. And this is quite stunning. I had just said in this entire story that we have been covering that no indictments, no charges had yet been filed in all of this scandal going on in New York City, in the mayor's office, City Hall, the NYPD, the New York City public schools. The New York Times has it right now that Mayor Eric Adams of New York City was indicted following a federal corruption investigation. That's according to people briefed on the case here. This is breaking right now. This is quite stunning here. We just read out that statement.
Revolutionary salute to our queen, our sister Kiana Perkins for the donation to the war chest. Revolution to wear life. Absolutely appreciate the love, queen. Salute.
Statement from the mayor firing back at AOC. AOC becoming the first New York member of Congress to call on Adams to resign. There are, though, in Albany, several state lawmakers who have already done just that.
So it's crazy. They were actually talking about the story and him beefing with her and the break. And he's saying,
Well,
I haven't been charged. And boom,
he going there chill.
the indictment came down right after he made this statement. So this is crazy, guys. I will be following up tomorrow morning. Again, it's very late. So I just wanted to get this out there. There's a lot of details to discuss. Hopefully they unseal the indictment.
Oh, man, lady, revolution is a way of life. It's never too late to get this message to your people. That's why we're here, y'all. I'm just getting home, but guess what? Like I told y'all, revolution is for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. This is late night revolutionary dinner for y'all, man. Eric Adams, the bad boy, he say, of politics, is now finna be cellmates with the bad boy of hip-hop, P. Diddy. Eric Adams just became a master mason. Wait, Freemason. What did he do, y'all? What oaths did he break? Huh? What's going on here? Why did they get Eric Adams?
All right, New York City Mayor Eric Adams has been indicted for working with and potentially taking money from some Turks. Okay, so we're going to get into how Cenk got his home raided in the midst of this story. But first, let me tell you what happened. First of all, he's the first New York City mayor to be indicted on a federal crime. That seems strange, not just because a New York City mayor has been indicted, but because I can't believe one hasn't been indicted before. Actually, there was a Jimmy Walker who was involved in a huge corruption scandal. It was so big, he said it was dynamite. He was mayor of New York City back in the jazz era, apparently, and ran away to Europe. And obviously Rudy Giuliani indicted, but in Georgia, not in a federal case, and 20 years after he was mayor. So lots of fun New York City trivia. But basically, Eric Adams, if the charges are correct, and the Turkish government, apparently not very good at this corruption thing. There is tons of corruption all around. AIPAC has a terrific blueprint for how to help a different country by buying off politicians here in America, but they do it legally. Whether you like it or don't like it, they do it through a legal path, and apparently in this case, they have done it through an illegal path. You might have seen that the FBI did something extraordinary before. They literally went into Eric Adams' SUV, told the security to step aside, and confiscated all of his devices. They had previously gone into the home and raided the home of his chief fundraiser. So these are all extraordinary steps. And obviously they did that because they're part of the deep state. And Eric Adams, wait, I'm hearing Eric Adams is a Democrat. Huh, interesting. Another name, thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. I'll try to reach out and say hi to the folks who do either super chats or become members during this live video. We appreciate you guys. The join button's right below. You know the live show mainly is every day, 6 o'clock Eastern, right? And everybody come join us and the live show is fantastic. We'll have one tomorrow, obviously, as well. And I just do these live videos here every once in a while when a story breaks. Obviously, when Cenk gets his home raided, it's going to have a story that I got to do a video on. So I'll get to that in a second as to why that happened. But first, Eric Adams, in case you need to know what the real story is, according to the allegations, as covered by the New York Times, did this for a relatively small, ridiculous thing. It grew out of an investigation. I'm quoting the Times now. An investigation by the FBI and federal prosecutors in Manhattan began more than 2 years ago and was focused at least on part on the possible foreign donations and on whether Mr. Adams pressured officials in the fire department to sign off on the opening of a new high-rise consulate building for the Turkish government, despite safety concerns. Okay. The investigators were also examining whether Mr. Adams accepted pricey flights and upgrades on Turkish Airlines, which is partly owned by the Turkish government. Interesting. And that's where Cenk might come into play here. So I'll get back to Cenk in a second. So apparently the investigation has proceeded enough that they looked into some of the Turkish officials they thought might have been funneling him money. They've looked into a lot of his staffers before in both this investigation and other investigations. Other fundraisers for him have been investigated. His buildings commissioner was investigated for corruption. We recently did a story on the live show about how his one of the top cops in New York had to step down because apparently his twin brother was getting all these contracts from nightclubs for private security, but the ones that were not hiring his brother were not getting security. These all are like such provincial local crimes. There's so much open corruption and legalized bribery in the country that has such enormous ramifications. But it's not to say that they shouldn't pursue this stuff. It's just I'm kind of amused by the anachronistic, like almost Mayberry-like corruption here in New York City. They're going, into the ways that things used to be done back in the day. Somebody would bring you some money, and then you would get some fancy flights and vacations. Oh yeah, Clarence Thomas and the Supreme Court also do that. But anyways, when money exchanges and especially when it involves campaign finance, that's illegal and that's going to get you in a lot of trouble. So Antony is wondering whether the title is clickbait. We're going to get to that in a second. One of our sponsors is Polymarket, and I'm amused by this. What were the chances of Eric Adams getting indicted? So yesterday it was 16%. Today it's 100%. So if you bet the 16 cents, you got paid on $1 today. So whoever was smart enough to do that at polymarket.com, congrats. You must have been extremely excited that the Fed seemed to be busting Eric Adams here. To me, look, the corruption is bad. I hate corruption. I hate it more than anything else. So if the Feds got him and it's true, I'm thrilled that they did. Second giant point is, guys, the deep state doesn't have any reason to connect a Democratic mayor of New York and the Republican candidate for office and a Democratic congressman down in Texas who might have gotten bribed by the Azerbaijanis, okay, and Menendez who got bribed by the Egyptians. That's another Democrat. No, they're just doing their job here. This is the FBI doing their job and trying to at least take out illegal corruption. So that's one of the reasons I want to know. By the way, Polymarket also has Eric Adams out as New York City mayor before 2025, and that's a 61% likelihood. That's pretty aggressive. So that means
Cardinale. He is a former lieutenant commander with the NYPD. He was with the NYPD for over 20 years. You're hearing at the same time, in real time, Joe, what everyone else is hearing, and that is that there is this indictment. It is sealed. We don't know what the charges are, but this is a federal corruption investigation. And there are so many. Again, just to go over the headlines, the FBI investigation of the mayor, the U.S. Attorney's investigation of the deputy mayors, the school chancellor, and the special assistant to the mayor, the former police commissioner being investigated for the so-called alleged shakedowns with his twin brother, the foreign influence case by another U.S. Attorney's office in Brooklyn. Just your reaction to sort of all of those headlines all at once, Joe.
Well, I agree with Alexandra that there has to be somebody that's talking. I believe that you're correct, that they would not go after somebody on this level unless they had something very solid against him. Of course, the mayor is going to fight it. He's presumed innocent until guilty. But when you have this many people in your administration that are involved, and you have the resignations, you have fire chiefs, ex-fire chiefs that are on the hook for something that we have yet to see what that's going to be all about. But when you have the police commissioner, he resigns, and then you have his brother involved in something. Then you have the Banks brothers involved. The chancellor and the deputy mayor over there. You have so many people on such high levels. And I have to tell you that, it's almost the arrogance for all these years that everybody has seen that it's not a wonder to a lot of people. That's the best way I can put it, that it's not a wonder to people that something like this could happen because of the arrogance that surrounds City Hall.
Let me just don't go anywhere, Joe. I just want to read a couple of things that are coming on across my desk, and that is that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, considered one of the left-leaning squad. She is representative from New York. She is calling for Mayor Adams to resign, saying this, and I quote, "I do not see how Mayor Adams can continue governing New York City. The flood of resignations and vacancies are threatening government function. Non-stop investigations will make it impossible to recruit and retain a qualified administration. For the good of the city, he must resign." And there is a response from the mayor to what Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has said, the congresswoman. This is what the mayor is responding to her, saying, quote, "For anyone who self-righteously claims people charged with serious crimes should not be in jail, to now say that the second Black mayor of New York should resign because of rumors and innuendo without even a single charge being filed is the height of hypocrisy. I am leading this city to protect it from exactly that kind of phony politics. The people of this city elected me to fight for them, and I will stay and fight no matter what." To that end, Joe, can I just ask you, Joe Cardinale, retired NYPD lieutenant commander for 21 years, where would the mayor be right now? There is an indictment. There is supposed to be an appearance tomorrow. Is there going to be an arrest and a booking?
Well, I'm sure they have this all worked out. I'm sure if it is something like that, knowing the legal system, he'll probably bring himself to them, and bring through his lawyer. And like I said, he's presumed innocent until proven guilty.
Man, that boy,
and he's fighting this right now on television. But
arrogant boule.
I said last week, where there's smoke, there's fire. When you have Commissioner Caban step down, then you have the two fire chiefs that are involved, then you have the deputy mayor, and then you have the school chancellor. Where there's smoke, there is fire. And I believe this snowball is going to get a lot bigger before it stops at the bottom of the hill. I think there's going to be other people dragged into this. And, I'm sure they have a good case. I'm sure they took their time with this case. You would hope so, to bring this, because this is serious misconduct that they're alleging over here. And it's something that has to be addressed once, and hopefully just once. And you hope they get it right. But once again, he has a right to his defense. He has a right to prove himself innocent. He has a right to proclaim his innocent. But on the national stage and on the New York City,
the boule, they shook right now. They done it just at this election time, letting the rest of the boule know who in power. Do not turn on the Democrats or your ass going to jail like them. This was the golden boy in the Democratic Party. This man had it all. He's the mayor of New York City. He's a millionaire too. Had it all going his way until he started talking down on them immigrants coming to New York, and then he gave P. Diddy the key to the city and said he the bad boy of politics.
The stage just doesn't look good at all.
So let me just give a little background to this evening, Joe. Eric Adams was at a reception tonight in New York City. It was with President Biden. And of course, anybody in New York knows this is UN week, and the city is just stocked with UN order cases.
Biden kissed him on his cheek and then indicted him. Oh man, Biden cutthroat.
It's everywhere. President Biden, other world leaders, all before this indictment became public. So that's where the mayor was earlier this evening. And the White House pool noted at about 6 o'clock tonight that among those spotted by pool reporters at the reception was Secretary of State Antony Blinken, NSC Coordinator for Strategic Communications John Kirby, New York Mayor Adams was there, and Jose Andres, the chef and activist, was also at that. Let me also, Joe, just before I come back to you about that, because what I want to know from you is, How much did the mayor potentially know about an indictment coming down, or would this have been a surprise to him as well? And how much pre-planning and coordination might the feds be doing with him in order to plan for
right now, bro.
an appearance by him,
It's
for him
over
to
for
come in, check in, and actually go through the booking process? So while you're going to think that through, I just want to give a quick statement from some of the other New York government officials on this remarkable development tonight. A tweet from Brad Lander says this: first and foremost, this is a sad day for New Yorkers. Trust in public institutions, especially City Hall, is essential for our local democracy to function and for our city to flourish. The hardworking people of New York City deserve a city government and leadership they can trust. Right now, they don't have it. Mayor Adams, like all New Yorkers, deserves due process.
This bitch ass nigga was stopping innocent black people, stopping, frisk them, black people getting beat up by the police. This man wasn't standing on. This is a sucker like I had in my city. You know, talking about he bleed cop blue. When you see, this dude got to be the first black mayor because of black folks crying, marching, shouting, putting in work. He used that, and then he was talking about cop blue, and went against all the black people until the immigrants start rising up in New York. Then he wanted to be black again. Well, it's too late. He already made a deal with Biden, and once he played with Biden, this is what happened to him. See, Trump warned these people Biden was using the Justice Department as a political weapon. These shoe shiners pretend like it wasn't true. Now Mary Adams know Trump wasn't lying. It's absolutely true. Biden is a dictator.
The presumption of innocence and his day in court. However, it is clear that defending himself against serious federal charges will require a significant amount of the time and attention needed to govern this great city. The most appropriate path forward is for him to step down so that New York City can get the full focus its leadership demands. At this urgent moment, the city leaders must focus on how we can best enable steady governance so that New York City can move forward and thrive. As the comptroller of this city, I will do everything I can to help ensure that this happens. And then Scott Stringer is calling as well for Mayor Adams to resign. This is what we're hearing in response to this incredible news of the Southern District of New York indicting the mayor. Scott Stringer says Eric Adams is indicted. There is simply zero chance that the wheels of government will move forward from this full steam ahead. Instead, we are left with a broken down train wreck of a municipal government. The mayor needs to resign for the good of the city. His legal fight is not our fight. While the mayor focuses on proving his innocence, the rest of us need to focus on the business of the city, building affordable housing, educating our kids, keeping this city straight.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to
If he was smart, he'd go ahead and give up to people that's bigger than him and that's been doing that shit forever. He's a dummy if he let these people lock him up just to save a few things. They might let him keep a few items. He used to take everybody down with him.
What's going on is Anton from AntonDaniels.com. I appreciate you guys for continuing to rock with me. You know we're going to cover this on the Millionaire Morning Show in the morning, but I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of an update because we've been talking about, specifically on the Millionaire Morning Show, Eric Adams and everybody in his inner circle, all of his top aides, the New York City chancellor, school chancellor, all of them are recently resigning. Everybody's devices has been getting raided. FBI been kicking in doors, and the only person that has not, been raided up to this point, except for right now, is New York City Mayor Eric Adams. Now, let me preface this by saying that he already had a target on his back from the New York Survivors Act. So the same act that Cassie had filed a lawsuit from Diddy, Eric Adams had caught a lawsuit from a woman from like 30 years ago, back in the early 90s or something like that, when he was still a part of the police force, and she accused him of something. But that's not related to what's going on here. when his first top aides device got raided, or their whole location or home got raided, they came in and they took all of the mobile devices. The feds came in and they took all of the mobile devices from everybody that was a part of his administration, including Eric Adams himself. Now, Eric Adams has been maintaining a level of innocence and saying, hey, listen, nothing is going on here. I'm 100% positive that everything is on the up and up. But over the last month or so, everybody, all of his top aides, everybody that's a part of his inner circle has been resigning. Even the top lawyer that was directly next to Eric Adams over the last year and a half has resigned. So let's go ahead and go over this article really quickly so I can bring you guys up to speed on what's going on in these streets.
But I can guarantee you his administration not no dirtier than the previous administration or the one that's coming after. New York is dirty. New York dirty. They're gonna have to really show us some amazing corruption to justify what they're doing, but they can't. They're getting this man. Yeah, he tied to Diddy, that's for sure. But his going against the migrants, going against Biden, that sealed his fate. When he tried to stop the migrants, why? Because black people and Latinos and everybody was rising up, like what happened in Chicago. And they start calling him the Black Donald Trump. That sealed his fate. But the scary part about that is that means they are weaponizing the Justice Department. Like Trump said, the Democrats out of fucking control, man.
It says New York City Mayor Eric Adams is expected to face federal charges. A mayor facing federal charges out of the Southern District of New York as soon as tomorrow. Two sources familiar with the matter Wednesday night. Eric Adams' administration is reeling from a series of high-level resignations amid at least four federal probes. He's repeatedly denied any wrongdoing. One of the investigations is believed to be focused on whether Adams' mayoral campaign conspired with the Turkish government. Turkish government, meaning that, and they're not the only entity that allegedly was a part of his mayoral campaign and him doing special favors and allowing for the Turkish government to be able to build over there and making exceptions with the fire department and all of this stuff. So they're saying that multiple different entities, including the Turkish government, played a role in influencing what was going to happen in New York City as far as them getting special favors in exchange for contributing to and assisting him in his mayoral campaign. Goes on to say to receive illegal campaign contributions from foreign sources. As a part of that probe, the FBI last year searched a home in Brooklyn belonging to Adams' chief fundraiser. Goes on to say federal investigators have been looking into whether Adams pressured the city former fire commissioner to approve a new building housing the Turkish consulate despite safety concerns. Pay for play. Adams was still Brooklyn's borough president when shortly after winning a Democratic mayoral primary in 2021, he reached out to then fire commissioner Danielle Negro. According to sources familiar with the matter, Adams encouraged Negro to evaluate a request from the Turkish government to use the building, which had not yet opened because the fire department officials refused to sign off on safety of its occupancy. Adams' phones were seized as a part of the inquiry, and FBI agents have questioned Negro as a witness at least twice. Sources familiar with the matter previously told NBC News, and they declined to comment. Goes on to say earlier this month, federal investigators searched homes and seized phones belonging to multiple top officials close to Adams. Police Commissioner Edward Cabin, who was among those whose phones were seized, resigned on September 12th, which was less than 13 days ago as of the recording of this video. His twin brother, James, a former police officer who owns a nightclub security business, also had his phone seized. Federal investigators are looking into whether James was paid by bars and clubs in Midtown Manhattan and Queens to act as a police liaison, and if those clubs were then afforded special treatment by local precincts, according to sources familiar with the matter. Of course they were. Of course they were. Why? Because this is a pay-for-play society. And the thing that these people don't understand is that if you are going to operate like this, because this is the reason why it's a power thing and it's not about the salary, and we always looking at the salary of what these officials make and stuff like that. These people be rich by the time that they leave office. Let's continue. The Adams administration is also facing a public corruption investigation and another federal probe that led to the search of the homes belonging to Adams' former director of Asian Affairs. I reported on that on the Millionaire Morning Show. The mayor's indictment leaves the city government in a dire predicament, said Douglas Museo, a longtime Burke College political science professor who retired last year. Who's in charge? What is this policy direction? With so many people already have resigned, city agencies are in a sense rudderless. So you have all of these different people, and I just did a video today of New York Mayor Eric Adams on the Millionaire Morning Show talking about how he had commented and said, "Hey, yeah, we'll be okay. And New York City people we're resilient. Everybody is going to want these jobs, okay?" And so he was talking about that, but he's known for a long time that the hammer was coming down on him. And so we ain't even got to worry about it no more. The only question is, what are they charging them with? What do they have? And how deep does the rabbit hole go, right? So that's what I'm interested in finding out. Again, voted in there based off of identity politics, came in, let all of the migrants in. Now I'm trying to figure out who's dirty and why, because if you notice, and I'll tell you, for a long time throughout this migrant
P. Diddy probably get about 5 years off his sentence for this arrest.
Crisis, when they first started dropping migrants off and it started to be advertised, and Eric Adams was over there, clapping his hands as they was getting off the bus, and he was selling out y'all cities, and he would reach out to the Biden administration, but he would hear no answer. Come on, listen to me. He was reaching out to the Biden administration and he was not getting an answer. And so he started to complain publicly, but then he got silenced. He was quiet after a while. And then he became a part of the organization, as far as the 5 mayors that signed that letter, that wanted additional resources, and they were celebrating yet wanting additional resources from the federal government to continue to assist them in the migrant crisis, as far as them designated themselves as main hubs and sanctuary cities. So it was him, Eric Adams, the recently resigned or ousted mayor in Houston, who his administration had been getting a whole lot of public inquiries, and it was a lot of stuff that was going on with the water department and the water main breaks and stuff like that. So Houston now has a new mayor, but that old mayor was a part of his signature, was also on the paperwork for becoming a sanctuary city. Eric Adams, Karen Bass over there in LA, mayor of LA, Mike Johnston, the Denver mayor, and the Chicago mayor, Brandon Johnson, Chicago mayor Brandon Johnson. Forgive me, because this is breaking news. And so everything that you hear me rattling off is things that just coming off the top of my head, because I am intimately familiar with this stuff and I've been keeping up to date on everything that's been going on with all of these cities, with the migrant crisis, these federal probes, who's getting money where, and whether or not the federal government is even responding to people like Eric Adams. So Eric Adams had been publicly visible and complaining, but at the same time, he had been silenced. If you pay attention to this campaign, this Democratic National Convention, everything, it's very rare that you don't have the biggest city and the biggest mayor speaking at the Democratic National Convention. For example, Eric Adams. You've seen Brandon Johnson, but then people could say, well, Brandon Johnson was there because it was in Chicago. Cool, fair. Let's go over to the Republican side. Every all-star Republican was on that stage. Ron DeSantis, Governor Wheelchair down there in Texas. All of those people, right? And I think that Governor Wheelchair is the best. He could quite possibly be, the best governor in the United States of America right now. You had Sarah Huckabee Sanders, and all of these people were speaking at the Republican National Convention. You're missing the biggest, most influential city in America that was not even invited, didn't even show up to the Democratic National Convention, and Eric Adams. That's when I knew, when Biden stopped responding to his inquiries, when they basically isolated him and they put him on an island by himself, and he wasn't even invited to the party, yet he's the mayor of the biggest city in the United States of America with over 8 million people. That's the financial hub of the United States. And he not invited to the Democratic National Convention? Come on, fam. Eric Adams is in hot water as a result of it. So when I seen that raid and I started to see all of the pieces fall and everything around him, his entire administration, it was literally like, swooping down on him on the inside, from the outside in. And he hadn't been touched yet his devices had been confiscated. And then I started to hear about the, Turkish people and the Turkish consulate and all of that stuff and the favors and different people that were getting paid for play and stuff like that, allegedly. I knew there was only a matter of time. It was just preparing ourselves. But we're seeing the fall of all of your leaders, all of the people that y'all elected that basically led y'all into the mire and is not doing the thing that's in the best interest of the people, but doing it for the best interest of themselves. So with that being said, I will be covering this on the Millionaire Morning Show. Make sure y'all tap into the Patreon. Link is in the description. Also, Teach Hanley, 40% off your first order plus 20% off of life. Shout out to Teach Hanley. And then come and kick it with me in Atlanta.
Mayor Eric Adams indicted by a federal grand jury on criminal charges that are still sealed tonight as this story broke within the last hour.
Fox 5's Kendall Green in the newsroom with more on how we got to this moment. Kendall.
Hey, good evening, Steve, Natasha. As you know, a lot has happened in the recent days, months, weeks. Several members of the Adams administration having their homes searched and devices seized. And tracking the investigation, of course, means tracking who is being investigated. Let's take a closer look. David Banks' unexpected retirement as New York City Schools chancellor at the end of the school year continues the resignations of Mayor Eric Adams' close circle, who are under FBI investigations. Some political analysts say a lot of eyes on City Hall as of late have less to do with policy and more with who's next.
Well, the optics are awful.
David Shapiro is director of the Inspection and Oversight Program at John Jay College.
I haven't seen a case where so many investigations are swirling around the orbit of one individual in the name of the mayor.
On September 4th, federal investigators raided the Harlem home David Banks shares with his partner, First Deputy Mayor Sheena Wright. Their electronic devices were also seized. Wright was appointed by Adams in 2023. Raids were conducted at the home of Philip Banks III, the chancellor's brother and current deputy mayor for public safety, and the home of former NYPD officer Tim Pearson. Pearson is a senior public safety advisor. Investigations of Adams' circle began last November, with federal agents searched the home of Adams' chief fundraiser, Brianna Suggs, as a part of a probe into campaign donations with possible ties to the Turkish government. New York City Sheriff Antony Miranda and his office are being investigated over money confiscated from illegal pot shops. In February, investigators searched the homes of Winnie Greco. Greco is the director of Asian Affairs. Former police commissioner.
These boule motherfuckers and people of color and whoever else got in on this shit was laughing at Trump when Trump said Biden was using the Justice Department as a weapon. They all laughed and said, no, he was corrupt. Now, I can guarantee you all of these motherfuckers, every last one of them, especially them black people, they so pissed right now and they saying Biden and Kamala is using the Justice Department to target them.
Commissioner Edward Caban resigned 2 weeks ago after his home was raided by the feds as well. His replacement, Interim Police Commissioner Tom Donlin, who says the FBI also searched his home soon after he was named. And now comes word the mayor has been indicted, to which Shapiro reminds us, while the optics may be bad, people are innocent until proven guilty.
Because our system is based on the rule of law, which protects individuals from hasty judgments.
They say, okay, you might get the job. Then the feds search his home. What the fuck was they looking for? What are they looking for if they say, okay, he might get the job? They're like, okay, you might have some information that we need. That's crazy.
Now, calls for the mayor to resign were growing louder even before we got word of this indictment against the mayor. Now, just yesterday, he said he would not be stepping down again, and this indictment does not remain sealed, and we do not know what the charges may be.
Walk me through the legal process and how he would have found out about this indictment, the timing between finding out, Mr. Mayor, you've been served, and also the publication of this, and where he would be and what he would be doing right now.
Absolutely. But first, actually, I want to just everybody take a breath. Just because you are charged with something does not mean you're guilty. The way this country operates is that you're innocent until proven guilty, and being charged does not mean you're guilty. So I'm hearing from Scott Stringer and a bunch of other people calls to step down. Just because someone has a job and someone else says, hey, you did this, does not mean they should automatically lose their job. We have to wait for this due process.
Oh yeah, they need to pay
Now,
this man out.
this indictment is sealed right now, so we don't even know what the charges are, how significant they are, or what his defenses will be. I can tell you, though, that this is something that would have been talked about with his attorneys. It is something that we knew was on the horizon because for the last couple of months, there has been a lot of searches of homes, confiscation of cell phones and seizures of cell phones, both from people in and around his circle, employees in his office, and some outside business people. I can tell you just from my inner workings in New York that the basis of this is some Turkish business dealings where maybe some funds were collected from a bunch of people for the campaign that should not have been, and then reimbursements were given. But we all have to just take a collective breath. Mayor Adams would have known that this was coming. His attorneys would have been in contact. I think we've all had that shock of when Sean Combs was arrested when the indictment came down. This is a little different. Mayor Adams is not a threat to flee the city or the country. He's not a danger to the public. So it's going to be negotiated. His surrender, they're going to walk him through the process of being, have to go through the process of being fingerprinted and everything else, just like anybody else that's charged. But that's going to be coordinated and negotiated. He is the mayor of New York. So I'm assuming he's going to have a couple of days to align his schedule so
this
that
bootlicker doing a bunch of gymnastics, like it's some dignity to be had. He's going to have to, he's going to have to squat, cough, bend over, get out of him. Make sure he ain't got it. What are you talking about, man? He got to put on jail clothes. What the hell are you talking about? Hey, listen, brother. Boy, these frat brothers, they loyal to each other, ain't they? House nigga, what you knew?
Happens, and nothing, no business of the city is interrupted. But I again just want everybody to take a breath. We should not convict anybody before they are found guilty or plead guilty to charges in any situation.
You ain't say that about Trump.
You are 100% right.
Bullshit.
And to that, you're a smarter person at this stuff than I am. But you know as well as I do that federal indictments result in convictions when they go to trial 98% or so of the time. So feds usually go after people they know they can get. And number two, this isn't just anybody. Dante, you've got to admit that going after the mayor of New York City, they've got more than they would normally have on any other criminal defendant.
Absolutely. You would imagine that if this office, the Southern District of New York, the federal prosecutors there decided to indict the mayor of the city of New York, they had to believe that they had an ironclad case. They said the same thing about Donald Trump, right? He was in the same situation where he was indicted. And you would have to believe somebody of that stature, somebody in that position, you can't afford to get it wrong. But again, the way this country operates is you are innocent until proven guilty. And we can't say just because most of the time, and you're absolutely right, that it's in the high 90s if a federal case goes to trial that they are successful. But there's those percentages where they're not. And we know that there's some people around the mayor that have been charged already. There were supposedly some gifts and things like that. We don't know what the quid pro quo was, which is necessary if this is a bribery charge. We do know that there was some money exchanged, again, with some Turkish business dealers, and also the ambassador of Turkey who was trying to open up a facility here, and he wanted to cut the ribbon, so he wanted things expedited. Supposedly there were some people in the mayor's office connected to that. We don't know what the connection to the mayor himself is. Is this somebody?
Look at this liar. You going to jail too, but how do you know? How did you know that's see? We got you. You know you fucked up, right? He say he wanted to cut the ribbon, so he wanted this expedited. What? You mean he used his power for personal reasons just so he can cut the ribbon? Oh yeah, you get indicted for that type of shit, brother. Thank you for that information. Hey, you say you knew that's the reason, right?
They trying to save themselves and saying the mayor told me to do it, or did the mayor really put all of this in motion? We have to wait and see. This is, though, and I will admit, a black eye on the city because you don't want politicians to be in this position at all where he has to fight this case. But I still think that we need to follow the rules of the land and not convict him ourselves before the process is played out.
Former police captain, this mayor, and, obviously critical that he now becomes the first New York City mayor ever to face a federal indictment. The word is that there's going to be an appearance tomorrow, which sounds just about right in terms of protocol after an indictment is announced. I would assume that by that point it would be unsealed. But walk me through the process. You said that this would be obviously a negotiated surrender. So he would show up where, to whom, and then where would they literally walk him, and what would happen in between the walk and the appearance?
Absolutely. So what I imagine is his attorneys already know what he's charged with. There would have been conversations and there would have been a negotiation of, okay, you can come in during these times. It looks like tomorrow is going to be the time. The indictment will be sealed when he goes in front of, unsealed, I'm sorry, when he goes in front of that judge. So he's going to have to go in to the courthouse. He's going to have to go in front of a magistrate judge, and he's going to have to hear what he's being charged with, and then he will be processed. He will have to go through the process of the pretrial services where you are fingerprinted, your information is taken. They may take his passport and things like that, just like anybody else who is charged with the crime. And then he's going to have to decide if he's going to fight this charge and plead not guilty so that he starts his defense in motion. But all of this will happen, what we're hearing, tomorrow. Once he's in front of the judge, the indictment will be unsealed, so we will know what he's charged with. The way charges work in federal court with the indictments, it's going to include a lot of information about the charges, not just the charge itself. It's going to have a statement of facts where it lists out what part of the investigation was and how they believe they can prove this crime against the mayor. So, and these charges against the mayor. So we're going to get a lot of details tomorrow about what they believe he did and how they believe he did it. We're also going to hear if there's other people involved in this directly. If there's someone who is cooperating with the government, we will not hear their names. Those type of things are protected and sealed.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find News Nation on
All right, guys, you can stop everything because this is officially the only podcast that you need to listen to today. Yesterday, I received an email from a woman all the way in New Zealand who decided to turn into Sherlock Holmes and fully dedicate herself to investigating Kamala Harris and all of these missing documents and all of these questions. And what she uncovered is potentially so shocking and so alarming that we can officially close the $1,000 bounty because she's earned it. I mean, she's going to receive the full 1K, because this is now getting dark and twisted. And my suspicions about Kamala Harris potentially pretending that the help was her family maybe have been confirmed. I'm going to let you guys judge. Don't want to get way ahead of myself, but do not go away. And welcome back to Candace.
No black family. We are war. Kamala gonna regret putting them pictures of them black people and say that was her family.
I don't even know where we begin here. I mean, I'm just shaken. So look, if you're just jumping into this, you got to stop and you got to go back 2 episodes and play catch up, episode 70 and episode 71, because we're not going to do too much recapping here because I want to jump right into this. Basically, someone came for Janet Jackson and I answered the door. It was a discrepancy that was in Kamala's book, a woman that she said was her grandmother.
D.L. Hughley and them bootlicking shoe shiners owe Janet Jackson an apology, nigga. Candace Owens and these people done proved she not black. And don't tell me about her black relatives because they proved them ain't her damn relatives.
Named Beryl, a picture of her and her grandmother Beryl. Here it is, visiting my paternal grandmother Beryl in Jamaica. And then I did just a brief search online and found out that Beryl allegedly died 4 years before Kamala was born. So that's a major red flag. Then I had a little bit of a gut instinct. The photos that were being presented of Kamala and her grandparents, great-grandmother and Beryl, I just felt that the women, or the woman, because I think they look remarkably alike, I just feel that maybe this woman was the help. And I'm not saying that because she's Black. I'm not racist against Black people. I am Black. I'm saying this because there's just a lack of emotion there. Like, I don't know if it's just my grandparents, but when they're with you, they're like super cuddly and cute. And this woman's just kind of very serious each time that she's being featured here. So anyways, what happened was we sourced Beryl's birth certificate. And then my instinct got a little bit stronger because her name was spelled differently in the birth certificate, right? So you see that it says Beryl spelled Beril, Magdalene. And we know for a fact, by the way, so people that are submitting other birth certificates, this is definitively the correct birth certificate because it says Iris Finnegan. And we know based on Kamala and Kamala's father, Donald J. Harris, that Iris Finnegan is the mother of Beryl. And then we see that her name changes, the spelling of her name changes, rather, by the time that we looked at her marriage certificate. Suddenly you can see that the marriage certificate has her name being spelled with a Y. Now that to me signaled that maybe she definitely is the help, and I'll tell you why. So my grandfather, before he passed away, maybe like 10 years before he passed away, I got kind of obsessed with trying to find all of these documents pertaining to his life, because I realized like that's my ancestry. And I was having a ton of trouble mining his grandmother's information because on each document, her name was spelled differently, as well as other people in the family. And I was like, Granddad, why is everyone's name spelled differently depending on the document? Like, this is very confusing. Why is it sometimes spelled Liza versus Eliza versus like Lizbeth? That was his grandmother's name. And he explained to me that they didn't know how to read and write. So you forget this. You forget that you had a world, the majority of people couldn't read and write, especially if you were not considered like a high class person. My grandfather grew up on a sharecropping farm. And so what that meant was, even if you had a name, if you couldn't read and write, you were going up to the register, whether it was for birth, whatever it was, and you were just telling somebody the name. You weren't saying like, hi, it's Candace, Candace. You're just saying Candace, and one person might spell it Candis, somebody might spell it Candice. If you do not know how to read and write, you don't recognize these discrepancies. So that actually, I thought, was a good thing in terms of like my idea that this woman could have potentially just been the help, maybe like on my scent. But I didn't want to be too convinced. Obviously, you know, I lean into the conspiracy mindset because we've been lied to so many times. But like I said, we did find that marriage certificate between Beryl and Lawford Newland, which was in July of 1944. And I want to be clear, guys, we know for a fact this is the correct Beryl. So we're not confused here and looking for more documentation when it comes to the birth or the marriage, because the correct parents are listed. You can see Patrick Finnegan is listed. And so we know that Beryl's parents are Iris Finnegan and Patrick Finnegan. So that is the correct parent, the correct marriage certificate. But we had no idea who Lawford Newland was. We had no idea that Beryl had allegedly been married after she birthed Donald Harris. That would be Kamala Harris's father. Thought that was like quite strange. She would have been 6 years old in 1944. Donald Harris was born in 1938. So this means that she got married to this guy, Lawford Newland, and she had a 6-year-old. So I thought that was quite strange. I couldn't find anything on Lawford Newland, but somebody on the team was able to determine that he arrived on a ship to New Orleans. He arrived in New Orleans, from Jamaica in May of 1943. So we're showing you here the ship manifest, and Lawford Newland is on the ship, and he is listed as, he's listed as a Negro. He's Black. It says his marital status is single. That would be correct because this would have been a trip the year before he got married to Beryl. So quite strangely, he went to New Orleans, and then I guess he at some point had to have gone back just a year later to get married. We still have not been able to locate the relevant marriage certificate between Oscar Harris. Now that's, again, Kamala's dad. His father is Oscar Harris. We cannot find that marriage between Kamala's grandfather and Beryl. So that's like a huge question mark there, right? Like, where is that marriage certificate? If you guys find it, we're checking our emails And we're obviously aware that there are a lot of different Beryl's that are being born in Jamaica at different times. Some people are like, this could be the case of two Beryl's, and they're sending us different birth certificates. Like I said,
Barack Obama got the same freaking background. It's a mystery. They did this on purpose, man. They did this on purpose, man. We don't even know who the hell these people are.
We know we have the correct birth certificate. We know we have the correct marriage certificate. We know for a fact that this Beryl did get married and that Donald should have been 6 years old when she got married. So it begs the question, was this her second marriage? Did she have a child out of wedlock with Oscar Harris? Did she have Donald? And then did she get married? Because it lists her on her marriage certificate as a spinster, which means that she's not married, obviously. And then she gets married to Lawford Newland. And then at some point they would have had to divorce if she remarried and got married to Oscar. So she would have had to have gotten with him, had a child with him, married somebody else, divorced that somebody else, and then gotten back together with Oscar and gotten married. That's like a lot of movement. Again, we don't have any documentation, so we're not going to speculate. But Beryl in general, I'm not describing her as the dog that's not barking, okay? So some people were saying, well, I've seen on different websites that there was also a Beryl Harris that died in 1995, and maybe this could potentially be her. We've done the math on that. No, that woman would have been born in 1914. Like I said, we know for a fact Beryl was born. The birth certificates are probably the most relevant source because you obviously wouldn't have a birth certificate written years later after the fact that your child was born. It says that Beryl was born in 1917. But I started going back to that piece that Donald Harris wrote. Remember, the first time that we were kind of introduced to the fact that Kamala Harris was Black, it was because Donald Harris wrote this piece, which came right behind Kamala Harris's book, Reflections of a Jamaican Father. And I just would like to, by the way, really stress to you how Black he was trying to suddenly make them. Like, I'm just going to read you the first sentence of this by Donald J. Harris, Kamala's father. As a child growing up in Jamaica, I often heard it said by my parents and family friends, "'Member where you come from." And then he goes on and he writes, my one big regret is that Kamala and her sister did not come to know very well the two most influential women in my life, Miss Crishy and Miss Iris. Okay, so those are his grandparents, according to him. Those are both of his grandmothers, maternal and paternal. And then the whole piece is about his grandmother, his two grandmothers. And he wrote, both of my grandmothers had the strongest influence on my early upbringing. And then in parentheses, he writes, not to exclude, of course, the influence of my dear mother, Miss Beryl, and loving father, Mass Oscar. Like, I think it's supposed to be like Massa, like Mass Oscar. Very strange. Again, nobody that I know calls their mom Miss Beryl, calls their grandmother Miss Iris, and calls their other grandmother Miss Iris. There's something about that that doesn't strike me as familial. But again, that's speculation. Doesn't matter. Maybe there is this strange family where everyone, like, they address their mom as Miss, and they address their grandmother as Miss, and they address their other grandmother as Miss, like that. It really isn't up to us to make any conclusions. But that's the first and last time that he mentions his mother, Miss Beryl. Okay, which signals to me that my theory about her having died young, you're saying you're raised by your grandparents, but your mother is around, but you don't talk about your mother or speak about your mother at all in this entire piece, signals to me that this is correct and your mother died early, okay? You're not mentioning her for a reason. So then this gets crazy. I get an email. Actually, I got two emails, but this one in particular made me sit up straight in bed. Like, I'm not kidding. I was like about to fall asleep and I just decided to check the email box, and I sat up. I sat up just like this and started texting everyone. And I woke my husband up. I was like, you have to read this email. This is completely crazy. It came all the way from New Zealand. Shout out to New Zealand. I'll be on tour there soon, you guys. Get out there, buy some tickets, because we're going to talk about this now. That's the only thing I'm going to speak about in New Zealand. But I'm going to just read this email to you because it's just incredible. Kia ora from New Zealand, Candace. My name is blank. And after your first podcast about the family of Kamala Harris yesterday, I went down the rabbit hole all day looking for photos of Beryl Finnegan Harris's brothers and sisters, as you asked. I was so intrigued and I wanted to take up your challenge. I could not find those photos, but I did come across a record that you might be interested in. I noticed on Kamala's birth certificate, you showed that her father, Donald Harris, was 26 at her birth in 1964, giving him a presumable birth year of 1938. That is correct. He was born in 1938. I'm just saying that as an aside. I came across the attached record of a 1-year-old child who died in 1940 in St. Anne's Parish. This infant's name was Donald Harris. You will notice the baby's father's name that is given was Albert Harris, and there's no mother mentioned. However, you will be interested to notice that a person listed as present at the death of the child was none other than Beryl Harris. Wow. She has also signed the death record. What are the chances that Beryl had her own baby named Donald in 1938 and then was also in attendance of the passing of a baby named Donald Harris in 1940? Weird, right? And just to be clear, that we're going to show you that certificate because it would mean that there were 2 Donald Harris babies born that Beryl was around. One was hers and one, I don't know, guys. It's getting weird. I'm going to finish this email, then we're going to talk about it. I have looked for the infant's father, Albert Harris, and cannot find a lot about him. Albert's father name was Abraham Harris. I believe it is possible he was married to a Violet Fearon on the 6th of March, 1935. No record of her passing, so why was she not at her child's death, but Beryl Harris was? Was this baby Beryl's or Violet's? If Donald Harris passed 1 year old, who is the man claiming to be Kamala's father? Oh my gosh, chill. She wrote, make it make sense. I'll keep digging. Chills. I was like, what are you talking about? I opened this email so fast. It was crazy. And let me just show you the attachment. Chills. I'm freaking out. I'm freaking out all over again. It's hitting me. It's a second wave here of what? So yes, you will see that listed here. This is a death certificate that is on the 29th of November, 1940. Okay. In St. Anne Parish. That obviously is where her family is from. And yes, the child's name was Donald Harris. The child died before the child turned 2. So this would mean that it is plausible that this child was born in 1938, the exact same year that Donald J. Harris, Kamala's father, was born. Okay. Can you pull it back up? I'm not done reading through this. Okay. So you have also, it says the certified cause of death is fever and a cold. And it's letting you know, it says the duration of the illness, so that this baby was sick for 1 month, rest in peace. And it does mention that that baby is the son of Albert Harris. And just as this person speculates, it is signed by Beryl Harris. And it tells you, because you're supposed to include this, the signature of the person who was present at the death. And it says Beryl Harris, present at the death. And that is at Mount Moriah in St. Anne. Now, I want to be clear, there is no place to put the mother's name. So it's not like there's anything like strange here. I just think that if this is this Beryl's child and this Beryl Harris was married to this Albert Harris or together with this Albert Harris at some time, like that is the reason why it just says that present for the death. Like literally, who else would be present? If your child is dying less than 2 years old, okay, barely 2 years old, who would you allow to be there in your place? There's no mother on earth that wouldn't be next to their child. So it is very heavily suggested that Beryl Harris was there for the presence of her son, Donald Harris, dying. And that would put that approximate birth of that baby at 1938. Stop the press. Stop the press. Okay. So you can imagine me. Now you're me sitting up straight. Like, what is going on here? Like, actually, what do I know about Kamala's father? Like, this could be a coincidence. I'm sure. Yeah, I guess you could have like a lot of Beryls that are giving birth to Donalds in the year 1938 in St. Anne Parish. Of course, like you have to consider every possibility here, but also consider that this is crazy. This is absolutely crazy. Okay. So then I received a second email. Okay. Very interesting here. Very interesting here. And I'm just going to read the email. I'm just going to read the email and take you through this. What happens when I go through my info box? I tell you guys to message with deets. This email says, "Hi, Candace. See the death certificate below indicating that Beryl Christie was a domestic servant in 1936 when her infant daughter died." So there's another, and this person has written Beryl Christie, and lost her daughter, and I'm going to pull it up here at the bottom of this email. She talks about like the birth dates. I'll get to that later. Do you guys have a close-up of this? Yeah. Okay. So you can see here, it is Beryl Christie. And this would mean not only did Beryl Christie lose a child in 1940, but prior to that, Beryl Christie lost a daughter in 1936. Okay. Again, all we have here is Beryl Christie. We know that this is potentially the right Beryl. Again, there could be another Beryl Christie going around. I don't want to completely close the door on that, but it is interesting. And I'll tell you why this struck me as incredibly interesting, because when we spoke about the death certificate yesterday, right, and we spoke about this young death of a woman, she's particularly died, Beryl Christie, of fibroids related to a hysterectomy. So if there is a Beryl Christie that had back-to-back, had lost children in some regard, you could imagine that she might have been injured internally. This is a long time ago. You would imagine that the procedures, obviously, are not what they are today. And it is plausible that that woman died young of fibroids from a hysterectomy related to the fact that she had 2 troubling births, whatever it is, carrying children didn't work out for her. I just thought like, okay, but the big part about that second one is that we now know for a fact that there was a Beryl Christie that was, in fact, a domestic servant. Can you pull that back up again? Because I want to point that out so people can see this. The last one, the close up of it, if we can. You can see that she is listed as a domestic servant. That girl is listed as the daughter of Beryl Christie. You can see that in that where it says rank, profession, or occupation, daughter of Beryl Christie, domestic servant. I don't know, guys. Like I said, I'm trying to now, I'm putting in columns to sort through the various Beryl Christies that were born around this time. Like I said, you guys keep sending me stuff, but just to make sure you're filtering yourself, we know for a fact that Beryl Christie was born in 1917. We know for a fact that Beryl Christie got married in 1944. To Lawland Newford, or whatever his name is, Lawford Newland, pardon. And so we don't need a bunch of documents speculating that it could be a different birth, because her parents are listed, and Kamala and her father have confirmed that her parents are Iris and Patrick Finnegan. Okay. So we know those are the people that we are looking for. Oddly enough, though, because a lot of people have been pointing out the fact that in her birth certificate, even though we know that that's her mom, Iris, that's the mom's name, Iris Finnegan, it says Magdalene, and then suddenly it converts to Christie. Well, I just wanted to point out to you, because that was a question we were getting a lot, is why would she take on Christie? In Donald Harris's piece, he writes explicitly that Miss Iris, so that's Kamala's great-grandmother, that her husband was known as Mr. Christie. So I'll read you that paragraph. It says, Miss Iris, mother of 8 children, I can't find 8 children, by the way, was the sweetest and gentlest person one could meet, but underneath it was a tough farming woman who ran the cane farm at Thatch Walk, jointly owned with her husband, Mr. Christie. So the reason she may have put Christie, or started using Christie as a middle name, is because that would mean that her father was being called Mr. Christie. Again, we are getting that directly from Donald J. Harris, who I'm now very interested in. I'm now very interested in this particular Donald J. Harris. Obviously, very easy way to debunk this, and maybe there really was just another Beryl Christie that happened to have a child named Donald in the same year from the same parish, would be to just take a look at Kamala's father's birth certificate. And we can't find that. We quite literally cannot find that. And I find that to be very strange. People were writing to me saying, hey, it looks like this was purposefully removed, that his birth certificate was removed. And I would just like to find it, because it would just kind of let me be at ease and know that there's nothing further to look at other than this child, because it's just a very, very strange thing. Okay, I also wanted to just go over everything we do know about Donald J. Harris, because I was interested in him suddenly. And the first thing is, he, according to him, like Miss Christie in this piece, is his paternal grandmother. He calls her Miss Christie. He acknowledges that they were descendants of the slave owner Hamilton Brown. And he is the founder of Brownstown. That's another thing that strikes me as very odd. And maybe there's something I'm missing here. But if you were a person that established a town and you had over 1,000 slaves, would you really just openly be married to some of these slaves? Like, is that something that would happen? I know that obviously they would have relations with the slaves, and that's something that is a reality. But in the way that they speak about their family, it's like they were just openly married with slave owners and slavers, which I find to be a little bit strange. As I said, he claims that Miss Crishy owned and operated a dry goods store, and that she died in 1951 at the age of 70. Then we have Miss Iris, who he mentions. That's the maternal grandmother. We can actually get up this, we can get up the family tree so people can see this. He mentions Miss Iris, and that is the person that he completely fawns over. That's his maternal grandmother, Miss Iris. She was a farmer, an educator, he claims. And he also says, which I find to be quite strange. Remember, he says he has the strongest relationship with Miss Iris, doesn't even mention his mother, Beryl. By the way, these photos are the ones that have been provided by Kamala herself and her father. I cannot verify that these are accurate photos, but we're just going to use the ones that they're given. But what's quite strange is he says that Miss Iris's ancestry is unknown to him. So I guess they never had that conversation despite how close they are. Again, she jointly owned the farm with her husband, Mr. Christie, and he died in 1981 at the age of 93. He says that she died at the age of 93 at the age of 1981. That's Miss Iris. Then you have Joseph Alexander Harris. Now that is the person who we are to understand that she was married to. The Harris name comes from his paternal grandfather, Joseph Alexander Harris. He was the landowner and the agricultural produce export. And he refers to the family property as Orange Hill. I think we need some Jamaicans to go out here and just start verifying stuff for me. And that Uncle Newton took over Orange Hill and started a limestone mining and brick producing operation in addition to cattle, grass, fruit, pimiento farming of earlier times. Now, again, I am just trying to understand how she came from a middle-class background. I mean, people that had slaves were super wealthy. It sounds like they always owned land, that they always potentially had servants. So I'm just trying to understand where this middle-class background comes from. My producer put in a note here that people in the live chat are saying that it's a Creole language, it's native to Jamaica when he starts speaking in this tongue. Okay, I literally didn't know that. I'm sorry, but I just found that he was writing in this way, which I found to be quite strange. I felt like he was trying to sell to us that they were definitely Jamaican or they were like descended from slaves, and they had slaves. So obviously his family actually had slaves, thousands of slaves there. So I thought that he was trying to lean into the slave language. So I'll correct that if that's actually English Creole. Okay, I'm going to take a break here and just speak about one of the sponsors of the show before I get into some of your comments and we speak more about this. This episode is sponsored by Nimi Skincare.
These polls are moving back and forth, right? So first, I want to show you the new NBC News poll. And then we're going to move into the Emerson poll and the New York Times Siena poll. The NBC News poll was released over the weekend. And I believe also the Emerson one. The New York Times poll was released, I believe, yesterday, early Monday morning. So you're going to see a shift that is happening in this presidential race. And I want to show you some other polls that people are not talking about. Because in this NBC poll here, they're going to show you that Kamala's doing really well in this NBC poll. But there's something that they're not showing you. Let's go ahead and dive into this. We're going to get started. I think they're showing the national poll here.
Just 6 weeks out from Election Day, our brand new NBC News poll is giving us the latest snapshot of where the candidates stand with voters. Steve Kornacki is joining us now from the big board to break down these new numbers. So, Steve, a big difference from our last look back in July.
Yeah, Hallie, and frankly, a big difference from our polling over the last year when Joe Biden had been the Democratic candidate, generally trailing Trump in our polling. Now, Kamala Harris, 49, Trump 44 nationally in our new poll. Two significant changes to how folks view Kamala Harris seem to be powering this. First of all, just the overall impression people have of her. Is it positive or negative? Well, look, back in July when we asked about this, only 32% of voters had a positive view of the vice president. Since she became the Democratic candidate, look at that jump all the way up to 48%, a 16-point jump. And this as well, she's the vice president in an administration, but when you ask the challenger at 38%.
How about those issues that...
Let me pause here for a second. So just a reminder, guys, that's the national poll, right? So she has increased significantly in the national poll for NBC, at least the NBC News poll, right?
Voters have consistently said matter to them, the immigration and the economy, Steve.
Yeah, so the headline here is positive for Democrats, but this is what Republicans have in this poll that they can take heart from. The border and immigration and the economy, those top two issues remain advantages for Donald Trump by 21 points for Trump on the border, 9 points on the economy. That's not quite the same advantage he had when Biden was the candidate, but that's still very significant potentially, Hallie.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about.
Okay, so you saw what is happening with the national poll for NBC. The NBC poll now shows that Kamala has gained quite a bit nationally, right? So she's kind of soaring up there. But I noticed something. I saw some people show that poll, but they didn't show you the other polls. So on this show, I like to show you different polls. I like to show you the ones that show her doing well. But I also like to show you the ones that show Trump doing well. Like I show you different polls so that you can see, it's not the same across the board. It depends on where the poll is coming from. In this Emerson poll, this one, however, focuses on the swing states. And I think this is really where I want to direct your attention, because at the end of the day, it comes down to the swing states, right? So you can be ahead in the national poll and win the popular vote, but lose the electoral college. This is what happened to Hillary Clinton. So if we scroll down this Emerson poll that was released, I want to show you the chart that they have here. And I want you guys at Emerson to use a darker font, please, or something. Like, God dang. I'm gonna need you guys to use better font, because I don't know what's happening with the font that you choose to use, but I'll hover over it for you guys so you can see it a little bit better. Let's start with Arizona. The Emerson poll shows in Arizona, Donald Trump is now at 49%. Kamala Harris is at 48%. For Georgia, Donald Trump is at 50%. Kamala Harris is at 47%. In Michigan, Kamala is at 49%. Donald Trump is at 47%. Nevada shows a tie. Interesting. North Carolina shows Kamala Harris at 49%, Donald Trump at 48%. Pennsylvania, 48% for Donald Trump, 47% for Kamala Harris. And this is the first time in the past couple of weeks I see a poll that shows Donald Trump ahead of Kamala Harris in Pennsylvania. This is why it's important that you see different polls that come out around the same time, because they don't all have the exact same, right? And then you got to think about the margin of error as well. And Wisconsin, this is another one that's different. Wisconsin on the Emerson poll shows Donald Trump pulling into the lead with 49% and Kamala Harris at 48%. Again, it's so close in these states with a lot of these polls. So you can also say these are statistically a tie, but the reality is, according to the Emerson poll, Donald Trump has now moved ahead in some of the swing states. So I don't want to just show you one type of poll, because I'm seeing people do this and I'm like, really? You guys not going to show them that other poll? So there's that one. And then there's the New York Times Siena poll. And this is the one that I think is really making people scream and scratch their heads. And they are not happy about this one. This one was released Monday morning. It shows that Donald Trump is now ahead in 3 of the Sun Belt states. Let's get into this.
Now to the campaign trail, where new polling appears to show former President Trump gaining ground in a few key states with just 6 weeks now until the election. Today's New York Times and Siena College poll has Trump in the lead in Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina, 2 of which.
Pause. We'll just go back here for just a second. Sorry.
Trump in the lead in Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina, 2 of which President Biden won back in 2020.
Pause right here. Does everybody see there is now a shift that is happening? Now, we're only about 6 weeks away from the presidential election, so November is getting closer and closer, you guys. And now that you'll see that now he has, in the New York Times poll, Donald Trump has 50% in Arizona. Kamala has 45. Joe Biden won this state. Donald Trump has 49% in Georgia. Kamala Harris has 45. Joe Biden won this state. Donald Trump has 49% in North Carolina. Kamala has 47% in North Carolina. Now, Donald Trump won that state last time. Now, here's something I want to point out with North Carolina, because I lived there. When I lived in North Carolina, went to high school there, it was pretty much solid red. Over the years, a lot of people have moved from blue states, particularly northern blue states, to North Carolina. They're moving from New York, New Jersey, like Massachusetts, and they've moved to North Carolina. And that's part of the reason why you are seeing North Carolina become more competitive in presidential races between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. There has been a population, change there. And another reason is because you also have to keep in mind the college area, like the Raleigh-Durham, Chapel Hill, the Triangle area, the college area there as well. It tends to be more blue. Parts of Charlotte tend to be blue. Fayetteville tends to be like a little bit more on the blue side. And of course, in the mountains, Asheville, which is pretty much more of the artsy community, tends to be blue as well. And then you have the rural areas in between. So there is changes that are happening politically in North Carolina, right? So that's important for people to see. He pulled ahead in those 3 states, according to the New York poll. But according to the Emerson poll, they have Donald Trump ahead in Pennsylvania as well, and in Wisconsin. So one thing that people have to remember, in order for Kamala Harris to win, if she gets Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, which she'll pretty much probably get Minnesota, Michigan, Wisconsin, those blue wall states, Pennsylvania, she'll be pretty much good. And then I think she can pick up probably Nevada. But she can't lose one of those. And this is the piece that I think a lot of people in the Democratic Party don't really want to come to terms with. This is what I was trying to tell you when it was Joe Biden in the race. You can't really lose Michigan. Now, it could be a chance. Maybe she could, pull out a win in North Carolina, but it's hard. North Carolina hasn't been blue since Barack Obama. So it's just something to think about. We'll go on a little bit more here, and then I want to show you something else.
But you also need money to run a campaign, and new numbers show Harris well in the lead there. Washington correspondent Kelly Myers live for us outside of the White House. And Kelly, Trump seems to be pulling ahead in those Sun Belt states. What does this mean for both campaigns?
Yeah, 42 days until Election Day, and former President Donald Trump is getting a boost of support in the Sun Belt. Former President Trump was just in Arizona 1 week ago, and we know Vice President Harris will try to catch up with a visit to Arizona this Friday. Now, former President Trump gained a lead in Arizona, 50% to Harris's 45%. Just to note, he also remains ahead in another 2 battleground states, key here, Georgia and North Carolina. And Trump lost Arizona and Georgia to Biden in 2020. 2020. And a Democratic presidential candidate hasn't won North Carolina since 2008. Harris is trailing Trump there by a slim margin and has been visiting that state nearly once every week. A poll also found Harris is losing support from Latino voters in Arizona. And also what's interesting there is this ticket splitting that's going on. The Democratic Senate candidate is still ahead, though Harris is behind Trump. And as you mentioned, Nicole, you need money to fuel the campaign in these last few weeks. And Harris's campaign just announced another $27 million it raised at an NYC fundraiser this past weekend. They say that's the largest single event since Harris has been at the top of the ticket. One official saying the campaign is grateful because they are gearing up to contend with outside super PAC spending from the Trump side. And speaking of Trump, he will be heading to Georgia and North Carolina, those other states that we mentioned. He will be there this week. But it's interesting to note Georgia Governor Brian Kemp, who is well liked in the state of Georgia, will not be joining him in Savannah tomorrow, we're learning. Nicole.
All right.
So I want to mention something here about the money that's being spent. It's true. Typically, the candidate that spends the most money is the one that usually wins. But you can also point to someone like Bernie Sanders, who had the most money when he was running in a lot of mainly grassroots, right? Grassroots donations. And that didn't help Bernie Sanders win the Democrat primary, even though he had the most money. He was polling better than Joe Biden, and he had already won like New Hampshire and Nevada. That didn't help him win the Dem primary. So that's part of it. But I want to go to this article here from the New York Times, because a lot of people lost their cool when this when this was published. Trump shows signs of strength in the Sun Belt battlegrounds, poll finds. And again, they mentioned Arizona in that video clip, and they said that she is struggling with Latino support in Arizona. Again, I believe that has to deal with the border issue. So for some people who came to the U.S. Legally and did that process the legal way, they are not too happy about migrants who have come here and have skipped that process. And I've heard this from people that have gone through the immigration process. So just FYI, tend to not be too happy about that. So a lot of people are pointing fingers at the Biden-Harris administration. That's probably why she's not doing well with Latino voters in Arizona. But I want to pivot to this part of the discussion here. Just want to drop down a little bit here. This part. The poll found that voters in this part of the country, where they're talking about North Carolina, voters in this part of the country were worried about their own future and the future of the nation, suggesting that Mr. Trump's dark campaign rhetoric, "Our country is being lost, we're a failing nation," he said in the debate, could be resonating with some voters. A plurality said the nation's problems were so bad that it was in danger of failing. Republicans were much more likely to hold that unsettled view of the future Democrats than Democrats, 72% to 16%. So they're talking about the future there. And then there's another chart I want to show you how the polls compare. So you can look at these polls side by side. The New York Times Siena poll, which I just showed you, shows Trump +5 in Arizona, +4 in Georgia, +3 in North Carolina. The polling average, you can see across the board, Trump +2, Arizona +2, Georgia, and him and Kamala even in North Carolina. And then if we scroll down here, you can see the other polls, Emerson, Signal, Political, Quinnipiac doesn't have, these two don't have a poll for Arizona, a new one just yet, Data, Orbital, and CNN. But if you notice across the board, look who's the one that's mainly gaining. It's Donald Trump. Kamala gains with the Quinnipiac poll +3 for North Carolina, and she gains +1 with the CNN poll in Georgia. But mainly across the board, Donald Trump is the one that is gaining right now. So we are seeing another shift happen with these polls. And then there's something else, and I think Democrats need to hear this. Shout out to Case Study QB for this one. There is still this issue that Kamala's campaign is struggling with, and that is the Black vote. And I know some people are excited, and I'm going to show you these numbers, and you're going to see them, and you're going to say, oh, that's a great amount of support for Black voters, but not when I compare them to her predecessors. Shout out to Case Study QB for this. Majority of Black swing state voters back Harris, but young Black Americans not committed to the Democratic Party. Let's get into it here.
There are new polls that are giving Democrats a real boost of optimism about where they stand in their battle against Donald Trump. But a recently released Howard University poll reveals that some red flags are there, and it's not just for November, but also for the future of the Democratic Party. First, let's get into the good news. The poll of Black voters in 7 key battleground states showed overwhelming support for Kamala Harris. 82% for Harris versus 12% for Trump, with 6% undecided or choosing a third party.
Pause there for just a second. Now, 86% for Black voters in battleground states. Again, that's good. Like, that's not bad. I'm not, look, I don't support Kamala Harris or Donald Trump, but I know people's like, you're too hard on Kamala or instead of Trump. Like, look, I'm gonna keep it real. Like, that's good. That's not bad. But wait till you see what else I'm going to show you, right? So 12% Black voters for Donald Trump, which will put him where he was in 2020. But look at this part here. Another candidate or undecided, 6%. If that holds, and I know some people are like, oh, that's only 6%, but this is just in swing states. If that holds, and let's say majority of that goes to one particular third party, like let's say it went to Jill Stein, for example, imagine holding at that 5% there, or that 6%. Imagine that, if that holds.
But a closer look shows both a generational and a gender divide that might force a reckoning in how they approach what has been their most loyal voting bloc as we look forward to future races. With 89% of Black voters over the age of 50 saying that they would vote for Harris, that number drops to 75% for Black voters under 50. Now, 75%.
We're going to go back to that picture because this is what I want people to see.
6% undecided or choosing a third party. But a closer look shows both a generational and a gender divide that might force a reckoning in how they approach what has been their most loyal voting bloc as we look forward to future races.
This part right here, and everybody needs to pay attention to this. Black voters over 50, 89% support Kamala Harris, 8% support Donald Trump, 3% support third party / undecided. But this is the problem that I think Kamala Harris is going to run into. It's Black voters under 50. 75% support her. 16% support Donald Trump, and 9% are undecided or third party. So here's the problem, folks. Kamala Harris, for whatever reason, is not reaching as many Black voters under 50 that Barack Obama was able to reach. Young Black people heavily came out for Barack Obama. And what it's also showing you here is that more Black voters under 50 are moving towards Donald Trump. That's 16% for Black voters under 50. And 9% for third party uncommitted. So what it's showing you is that for the most part, Black voters under 50 want change. Because the reality is, if you're really not looking for like significant change, whether it's the economy or whatever, and you're fine with the status quo and you just don't want Donald Trump again, it makes sense that for Black voters over 50, they would still, 89% would get behind Kamala Harris. That makes sense because you're not really looking for change. I mean, why would you're not going to be willing to rock the boat. That makes sense. Also, if you're over 50, you might fall into the bracket where you already have Medicare. So when someone says we need universal health care, you may not really care about that because you already got it. These are some of the things I ran into during the Bernie campaign. When I was trying to get, older people to support, they were like, I already got Medicare. Just things like that. So it is showing you that for whatever, younger Black people are not flocking to Kamala in that way, and they're increasing their support for Donald Trump.
With 89% of black voters over the age of 50 saying that they would vote for Harris, that number drops to 75% for black voters under 50. Now, 75% seems like a strong number. Young black Americans, however, are clearly not flocking to MAGA, but they are not as partisan or loyal to the Democratic Party as their parents or their grandparents. And that is especially true for young black men. For black men under the age of 50, 72% surveyed chose Harris, while 21% favored Trump.
That is significant, folks. Black men under 50 that were surveyed, only 72% for Kamala, 21% for Donald Trump. What does that tell you?
More than 1 in 5. 7% of those black men were undecided or prefer a third party. 28% of young black male voters say that they will go for Trump or someone else over Harris, and that should be a 5-alarm fire for Democrats. Because for decades, winning national elections has meant running up huge margins with black voters for Democrats. On Tuesday, at the National Association of Black Journalists panel in Philadelphia, Vice President Kamala Harris was specifically asked about young black male voters. Here's what she said.
I think it's very important to not operate from the assumption that black men are in anybody's pocket. Black men are like any other voting group. You got to earn their vote. So I'm working to earn the vote, not assuming I'm going to have it because I am black, but because the policies and the perspectives I have understands what we must do to recognize the needs of all communities. And I intend to be a president for all people.
So what is happening here with black men? And I don't like people voter shaming. I really don't like people voter shaming, but I really, really don't like people voter shaming black men because they are, some of them are deciding not to support Kamala Harris. I think people should be independent and have their own mind and get out of these boxes and do what they feel is best for them and their situation and their community. And I think there's something that needs to be said here. For quite some time, the Democratic Party has, kind of reached out to black women. Stacey Abrams was notorious for reaching out to black women to get them to register to vote and come out and support Biden in 2020. She did a good job. I ain't gonna hate, she did a good job getting out the numbers out. But where was that same, energy for black men? Where was that same outreach? When we talk about policies that people are focused on, it may be easier for Kamala Harris to recruit more women because one of the policies that she's talking about is obviously that overturn of Roe v. Wade, which does impact women. But then on the other hand, you may have black men who kind of sit on the side and may feel somewhat neglected. And they're like, well, what about us? What about the policy positions that are going to help us? And they're not hearing that from Kamala's campaign. And I think this is a big part of the problem. Now, you're going to see that here when we get to the gentleman that he brings on the panel. Let me bring them. Let's just go forward. I want you to hear what, of course, Simone Sanders had to be there, but I want you to hear what this guy says, because I think Democrats need to understand that, I do see it too. I do feel like you're kind of neglecting black men and focusing really heavily on black women when it comes to black voters. And then it also seems like when black men speak up about what they want policy-wise, there is this sense of shaming towards them, like, how dare you? And Nina Turner was saying this recently. I agree with her on this position. She was saying this recently in an interview at the DNC. She said that the Democratic Party has started to emasculate black men. And, I don't think too many dudes okay with that. And they're probably just like, hey, what about us?
Co-director of Black Men Lead, Tremaine Lee, my co-host, MSNBC correspondent, and my partner on MSNBC special, Black Men in America, The Road to 2024, currently streaming on Peacock. And, of course, Simone Sanders Townsend, my friend and co-host of The Weekend, as well as a chief spokesperson for Vice President Harris, as well as the co-host of the upcoming MSNBC special Black Women in America, The Road to 2024, premiering on September 29th, right here on MSNBC. Simone, before we get started, I think I speak for Tremaine and myself in saying that we are both super excited to see you and Melissa carry the torch around Black Women in America, and very excited to see what you guys have cooking. But I want to start with the men because this is a conversation where we've been getting a lot of heat. Phil, I feel like this sort of notion around young Black voters who have decided to shift their allegiance to Donald Trump because of the stimulus check has become a little tired and overblown. And I think that there may be other reasons why Black men are looking elsewhere. But I'm curious, with the work that you're doing with Black Men Build, for example, that we've discussed right here on the show, have you found that to be the case?
No. So first off, I want to thank you for having us back on. I'm really happy to be on here with Tremaine and Simone. Black Men Build just completed a 10-city tour where we talked to thousands of Black men who are feeling overlooked and not considered in the political discourse in this country. This notion that Black men are seeking another option or Black people are seeking another option because of a check is put forward by bad faith actors to paint a story about Black men that is very simplistic. I think and what we've seen as we traveled across the country is that people feel, rightfully so, that the Democratic Party has proven to be woefully insufficient for the moment in a lot of different cases, in a lot of different subjects. Black men are overworked, working multiple jobs, still can't make ends meet, the rising cost of living, can't afford housing, trapped in a cycle of poverty, trapped in a cycle of incarceration. And we consistently feel that the Democratic Party dodges those questions and doesn't address them directly. One interesting thing that you saw on that chart that you showed earlier is that people actually aren't just moving to Trump. They're moving and looking for another option, a third option that wants to talk to the direct material needs of Black people: housing, school, food, jobs, those basic material things that everybody needs that we don't feel that the Democratic Party adequately has spoken to and doesn't have a history of prioritizing. And so when we see big celebrity events and big old concerts, those things don't resonate because those are the things that don't put food on the table.
That right there is very important. Doesn't put food on the table. And then also, too, one of the things that he mentioned about policing, criminal justice reform, Kamala Harris may not be your cup of tea for that one because she is a cop and she supports giving police more money. She's very pro-police. Like I said, her and Donald Trump are the same in that regard. They support a police state. The Democratic Party is supporting and building cop cities. So again, these concerts that they have where people are just shaking your booty and all that kind of stuff, that's great for entertainment. But I think during a time where people are complaining about the grocery store prices, we have all these, wars abroad, I think people want real concrete policies and demands. And one of the things that I've also noticed too, and I talked about this earlier today on a radio show, I wonder about the women, because for all the women that said they're going to support Kamala because she's going to fix the Roe v. Wade issue, I have not heard Kamala Harris explain how she's going to fix that issue. And I want to ask you, maybe you guys know something I don't know, but do you know any Supreme Court justices that are planning to retire anytime soon? How is that going to happen? It's one thing to have a list of things, but I don't hear anybody asking Kamala Harris how she is going to change that, right? And that's a problem. And I can see a lot of women being upset about that if that isn't resolved. And she's running on that. But when I look at other candidates compared to Kamala Harris, 2016, this is Hillary Clinton. We're looking at the voter pool here. Black voters, Hillary Clinton received 88% and she still lost. Hillary Clinton received 88% of the Black vote and she still lost. Isn't that crazy? Because she did not win in the swing states. So she won the popular vote, but she lost the Electoral College. If I want to check out Joe Biden received 87% of the black vote. So he received less than Hillary Clinton did. And he won because he won the Electoral College. Hillary did not win the Electoral College. So when you see that poll that I showed you of Kamala Harris and her support from black voters, right now, where she's sitting, it said, oh, it looks she's polling at this percentage, I think it's 87% or whatever right now between black voters. But when you look at her predecessors, this is the warning that I think people are trying to give the Democratic Party. Joe Biden had 87%, but his key was winning in the swing states. Hillary Clinton had 88% of the black vote, and she lost because she didn't win the swing states. So what people have said, and if we bring in Barack Obama, he received 95% and then 93%. Black voters are either leaving the Democratic Party or not showing up as much to participate in the presidential election, because no Democratic candidate has been able to get that 95% support that Barack Obama got since then. So that tells you something. But yes, people do want other options. And then there's this problem. And we really got to bring this in. And I don't know if people know about this, but here's another issue. Black operatives are furious over how Kamala Harris's campaign is spending money. And what they go on to say here, this is recent, by the way, Derek Johnson, the NAACP, not happy with her about this. Derek Johnson, who's president of the NAACP, was frustrated after a call with Kamala Harris's campaign early last month. He and others on that call felt they hadn't gotten a clear answer to something that mystified leaders in Congress, co-chairs of the campaign and donors. Why did it seem like minority-owned political firms that typically work with Democratic campaigns aren't getting as much of the record-breaking Harris campaign money as white-owned firms? Uh-oh. Here we go. If black voters are the base, it should be black vendors telling the story, said one person familiar with the conversation with the nonpartisan group's leader. And by the time the call finished, we still didn't really have a clear answer on anything.
That's them shoe shiners.
Democrats are worried about the backside they appear to be having with some of the black voters, and black vendors and their allies see an obvious solution: spend more money with the political class who actually know the most about the constituency and can adeptly tell Harris's story. But minority vendors and media companies believes Harris campaign is taking operatives of color for granted. You don't say. Taking operatives of color for granted and failing to spend around the lucrative contracts white-owned firms are getting. So now you have a complaint here from the NAACP, who does support Kamala Harris, but they want to know why. Why is it that the white firms are getting all of, the majority of the money, and the black firms are ignored? So again, this is another thing to point to when we talk about Kamala Harris and her lack of desire to prioritize the black community, which the Democratic Party needs in order to win. This guy summed it up so well. I like this video. These TikTok vids just crack me up.
I'm about to ask y'all a question, and I'm so serious when I say this. Was it the shot that stopped y'all from thinking? Please answer me. Please. Because it's not one competent person right now in the whole entire Democratic Party to answer one question for her. Nobody got sick of her saying the same shit and said, Kamala, I'm tired of you losing for us, and handed her a piece of paper. Y'all handed millions of dollars to Megan Thee Stallion and Quavo to shake their heads and tell you they in the streets. But you can't get a fucking answer out of your vice president? You mean to tell me y'all don't have a competent writer to write her an answer that she be reading from note cards and she still never answers? This shows me everything I need to fucking know about the entire Democratic Party. Y'all are batshit crazy. It ain't nowhere in a motherfucking world you can vote for some shit like this. She haven't said nothing. Not a goddamn thing worth voting for. You ask her about what she gonna do with the inflation, and she's currently VP. Let me say that again. She's currently VP. You ask her what she's gonna do about inflation, and she tell you this long, drawn-out story about her mama being a middle-class citizen, working hard from the bottom up, and that has nothing to do with 2024. She take you all the way back to 1960. Y'all stupid as a motherfucker.
So I guess that pretty much sums it up there. But it's interesting. Again, like I said, Kamala, from what I've seen, she's an empty suit. And I think more people are starting to notice that. The more interviews that she does, I think it becomes even more apparent. But those polls, man, they're just going back and forth and back and forth. But there's something to be said there that people want more options. And I'm one of those people, damn it.
Trump says that he was briefed by U.S. intelligence, and he says that Iran is really trying hard to assassinate him. And he's all in on this one. And it's very confusing because when he was actually shot at in front of our eyes by a white American man, he definitely seemed demure about it, I guess. I hate to use that word because I'm not using it the way the kids are using it. He was shot at recently at his own golf course, and he played that down. But so why is he all in on Iran? That's weird, right? Also, why would Iran do that? Given 2 American men have already tried to actually assassinate him. Why are all eyes on Iran? Well, here is his confirmation about this on X. He also posted it on Truth Social. Big threats on my life by Iran. The entire U.S. military is watching and waiting. Moves were already made by Iran that didn't work out, but they will try again. Not a good situation for anyone. I'm surrounded by more men, guns, and weapons than I ever have been before. Thank you to Congress for unanimously approving far more money to Secret Service. 0 no votes, strictly bipartisan. Nice to see Republicans and Democrats get together on something. An attack on a former president is a death wish for the attacker.
Almost everyone in the chat is saying Iran in quotation marks. Like
yes.
that the Don is falling for the deep state trick here. I mean, it's overwhelmingly, I think everyone in our chat believes that this is a false flag piece of garbage.
Well, so many weird things. First of all, he recently had said that he is refusing security briefings because when those briefings are leaked by somebody else, he gets blamed for it. So he took this briefing and he is parroting what they are saying to him. So that's strange. So does he actually believe this? And we don't know. We don't know what proof was given to him. The last time they arrested a man from Pakistan who said that he had been funded by Iran, who wanted to kill Trump. So why do they want it to be Iran so badly? It feels like that's their wish right now. Think about the piece we did yesterday about all the ways we are sold lies in order to go to war with a certain place. And then digest this information through that lens. Now, here's what NBC says about it. Here's what a spokesperson said, why anybody would want to kill President Trump if they're from Iran. He says, President Trump, this is a spokesperson for the government, said was briefed earlier today by the Office of National Director of Intelligence regarding real and specific threats from Iran. Real and specific, they said, to assassinate him in an effort to destabilize and sow chaos in the United States. Now, I feel like we're doing a pretty good job of that on our own.
Yeah, why shoot? Like, don't jump into the mess when we're already shooting ourselves in the foot and destabilizing ourselves. Have you looked at our southern border?
Right.
Like, we're doing a pretty damn good job of destabilizing our country. We don't need any more help from Iran.
Now,
for crying out loud.
The source here. Sorry, go ahead, please.
I was just going to say, what a way to get. So it's like if they know that Trump could potentially win,
what a way to, propagandize him to get him on board to the war that they want. So they're like, okay, we've got to convince Trump that this is all true so that we get the war that we want.
Yeah, Luke Radosky said the same thing today on Twitter. He's like, man, whoever is in Trump's ear. And this was, again, Colonel McGregor's biggest complaint about it is that Trump tends to listen to the last person in the room. And, whatever Luke said, he's like, whoever got to Trump, whatever's putting this in his ear, like, this is deeply troubling. Someone's gotten to him.
Yeah. So, okay, this quote, is there anything else worth looking at in it? Intelligence officials have identified that these are continued and coordinated attacks. So that's so interesting, though, right? Because what our government is telling us is that Iran is super dangerous and it's their nation state, not just anyone with Iranian blood, but their nation state that wants this. Meanwhile, if you listen, which we try to do, Iran has been publicly saying over and over that it wants diplomatic talks with the United States. They say that. So you would think, oh, okay, we think there's a threat coming from inside this government. Maybe we should go talk to them and assess if it's real. No.
And by the way,
we don't
Russia
talk to them.
And Russia is a close ally with Iran, very close ally with Iran. And so we're going to talk with Russia and try to formalize a relationship, as Trump has said, with Russia. But then Iran, an ally of Russia, is going to openly try to assassinate a president of the United States. That makes zero sense if you think about it.
Right. And so think of the things we're constantly trying to blame on Iran as nuclear weapons, even though we launched a cyber weapon on their nuclear power plant.
Obama did.
Obama and Israel. And, well, Bush was involved in it too, Bush number 2. So nuclear power plants, and now this assassination attempt, and also being aligned with groups that we call terrorists. Nice. So this, though, was the headline from the last week of August. So this was about 3 weeks ago when their brand new president and their supreme leader said, we are open to talks with the U.S. Now, this was about nuclear program, but also about all diplomacy. They said, all we want from the U.S. is to lift sanctions, and we will go to talks. So they want to accuse Iran of having nuclear weapons, but not prove it. They want to basically talk some crap and not actually talk to them. When Iran made this offer about their nuclear programs, here's what the State Department said. Oh, no, we're not going to do it. Said the headline, Biden administration throws cold water, saying, we don't think they actually mean it. We are far away from returning to negotiations. Yeah, and in fact, the State Department later said if they really wanted to be serious, they would stop nuclear escalations, which we have no proof of, and start meaningfully cooperating with the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, which they do. So we are lying here. So look at the lies about Iran. We tell them all the time. It's just, it comes out of our mouth like vomit.
Well, and we have, and you should be suspect anytime suddenly the Biden administration is on the same page with the intelligence community, all of it. So Antony Blinken on an interview on the Today Show saying, oh, yeah, we take this threat very seriously against President Trump. You know, we're watching the Iranians. We're watching it closely. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Oh, you Antony Blinken? Yeah. Okay, I trust Antony Blinken. I trust all of these three-letter agencies.
We want to protect him against Iran, but not against domestic threats. Not at all.
Yeah.
Well, and what's weird about this, Biden throwing cold water on it, wasn't it Obama? It was like, while he was vice president when the first nuclear deal was reached, right? When they signed the, I'm trying to think of the right words, like the treaty.
The arms deal. The arms treaty, the nuclear.
Yeah, where they basically, that's where the IAEA started coming in there. That was an Obama era deal, right? So how could they be so far away from it when he was part of the team that came up with the original deal? That doesn't make any sense.
Well, stop
using
trying
facts
to make it make sense.
Yeah, stop trying to use sense here, Philip.
Right. I was going to play you this video again where the IAEA says we actually are working satisfactorily with Iran. I feel like you don't need to see that again. You've seen it twice. So it's a lie. The United States makes up lies about Iran all the time. If you really want an inside scoop on how the United States just tortures Iran based on an alliance with Israel and for no other reason, read the book, The Art of Sanctions, where this dickhead Sorry, I said I would stop saying swearing, but I'm not going to. The guy who wrote the book literally talks about how they had an idea that Iran had nukes, so they were going to sanction them into oblivion, and people die. Those are sanctions of mass destruction. So this guy can go out and get a Z-Pack if his daughter has an ear infection. But Iranian people, no, and that's their own fault. So I refer you to that. Where was I?
Let's put up a poll because some people in the chat, well, like most people understand what's going on here, but there are a few people that are like, Redacted's being naive right now. Iran really does want to kill Trump. Okay. And look, maybe they'll have you believe that, and they'll have an Iranian that the CIA will have worked with and contracted with to carry something out, and they'll arrest him, and they'll say, see, look, that's exactly what we talked about last week on the show. That's exactly what ex-CIA agent Michael Scheuer said. He said, this is a tactic of the CIA. Find a dumb Muslim, find somebody that you can use to carry out an attack like this, and then you can paint them. Well, look, we swooped in and stopped them. They're trying to carry out an assassination attempt.
Okay.
Patsy.
And let's play this out. Okay, let's say, yes, Iran really wants to kill a presidential candidate in order to put us into chaos because we're supporting Israel. Why would there be no threats on Kamala Harris? Why would there be no threats on Joe Biden? Why would there be no threats on JD Vance? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Bueller? They would equally want to attack all of those people, right?
But we're naive. Okay, then I'll play it out. Maybe we're being totally naive. Maybe the CIA is right. Maybe these three-letter agencies are telling you the truth. Maybe the Biden administration is not lying to you. Maybe. I've been fooled way too many times by these people that I'm not going to buy the line in the crock of garbage. And when I see them going to the Washington Post and I see them showing up on all of the major broadcast television stations that they're in bed with, and they're all on the same page with this story, I don't believe it. But like, you do you. Maybe I'll be surprised.
I was going to say the CIA is just all of a sudden like, you know what? We've lied to so much. Like, let's just start being transparent and telling the truth, guys. Like, we're losing the faith of the American people. Yeah. Let's just start.
They started today.
Yeah.
They started today. So I'm going to give them, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. I mean, Mike Pompeo on camera says that they go through training classes on how to lie for a living and deceive the American people. That's their job, but they're telling the truth now.
Right. And you think of all the false flags that we've been given to buy into wars, the ones we talked about yesterday. Let's see, Noriega and Saddam Hussein and all of this. It's always they're attacking civilians. They're attacking peaceful protests. They're not allowing democratic elections. Well, I guess they think, well, the American people aren't buying that anymore. They're tired of that line. So now we have to think that one of their candidates is at risk. It seems like just a new spin on an old tale to sell you war. So buy it if you want to. I'm not gonna, but you can. No, in August, we were also told that the Trump campaign was hacked by Iran. We should just keep track of this as they keep coming across our screen, right? So not only was it a Pakistani man who was, believe me, that was Iran, right, who tried to kill Trump. Now there's new, continued and ongoing and coordinated threats. And also we had the hack of their campaign, even though it was the Democrats who actually hacked the Trump campaign. But sure, Iran did that too. So that also came from the intelligence state, which again has used us a lot to get into war with false flags. But when we got that news in August about the hack of the Trump campaign, here is what DC Drano said. He said, let's call it what it is. The CIA hacking Trump again, right? Because they did it in 2016 through the Clinton campaign, or at least CISA or the CIA allowing Iran to hack Trump. So it's a workaround. It's a reach around. Can I say that? I guess I've already said so many.
You're
okay. I'm on a roll today. I'm not having it, you guys. Okay. And since we know that the attacks on Trump persist, is this maybe a preemptive warning when another attack on Trump happens domestically? That's what Roger Stone predicted. Watch.
Suddenly the FBI announces they've uncovered an Iranian plot to kill Trump. This to me smells like a setup. So that if there is another attack on Trump of any kind, a road bomb, a drone, or God forbid another bullet, well, then they can conveniently blame the Iranians.
Yeah, like John Lombardi in our chat says, a white Iranian. That's exactly what it is.
I mean,
Okay,
of
go
course,
ahead.
that's what they're doing. Like that's what you do. Like you put the story out there, then you can do whatever you want, and when you finally succeed, then you've already got the blame placed. You don't even have to do the work afterwards because people will automatically be like, Iran succeeded.
Yeah. Although the word Iranian comes from Aryan because they did consider themselves the Aryan race of the Middle East. But okay, we won't get into that. So the question, why would Trump publicize this? Why? Did he see some solid evidence that we don't see? Let's leave some space for that. That could be the case. We don't know. Is he afraid because he's just getting weary of being shot at? Possibly. Or is he signaling that he is game for a war with Iran if and when he's elected? Israel wants us to go to war with Iran. That's pretty obvious. Trump has been very clear that he supports Israel. Is that where we're going? J.D. Vance, in one of his first interviews after getting the VP nomination, said that he's game for hitting Iran super hard. This was at the Republican convention. That's why the party music.
A lot of people recognize that we need to do something with Iran, but not these weak little bombing runs. If you're going to punch the Iranians, you punch them hard, and that's what he did when he took out Soleimani.
Okay, so does this mean that Trump will not deal diplomatically with Iran? He said he will do so with Russia, but Iran, no. Will he put more sanctions of mass destruction on them the same way that the Obama administration did? Will he do it then to go to war with Iran, as is Israel's desire? Well, here is my favorite take on this from Ron Paul. He says this is why we have such a bad reputation around the world, is this kind of rhetoric.
And the headline is Trump's VP pick Vance says Iran needs to be punched hard. Well, that's great diplomacy, I'll tell you. There's a lot of problems in the world. And if you're sincere in changing it, you stick to principle and you have an open door for at least a discussion. If people will not discuss and will not talk and aggravate, and some people interpret that's our foreign policy. You do it our way or not, or it won't do it. But acting like a bully does not work.
Yeah, I don't vote to be the bullies, but okay, I vote for diplomacy. Doesn't look like either the Harris-Biden administration or a possible Trump administration is heading towards diplomacy. I hope that I'm wrong.
You know, most guys think their testosterone is being drained.
Tony Blinken deliberately lied to Congress to make sure that Israel could continue a genocide in Gaza without interruption. In May, Blinken told Congress that we do not currently assess that the Israeli government is prohibiting or otherwise restricting aid, referring to food and medicine. The only problem with that statement is in April, he was told by two government agencies, the USAID and the State Department Refugees Bureau, that they in fact were prohibiting aid from entering Gaza. What's kind of crazy about that is that we all saw the videos of Israel actively preventing aid from getting into Gaza. They were even justifying the reasons they were holding up the aid. So I don't know how he thought he was going to get away with that lie in broad daylight, but whatever. But the truly sinister shit is the reason he lied. Now, the findings of these two agencies were explosive for many reasons, but mainly because the United States law says that if a country is found to be blocking humanitarian aid, specifically from the U.S., from reaching its destination, then they have to cut off all weapons shipments to that country. In one of the drafts that Blinken was actually supposed to read to Congress, a senior official put, and I quote, "There is an abundance of evidence showing Israel responsible for blocking aid." Stacey Gilbert, who wrote that statement, resigned after being disgusted with Antony Blinken's unwillingness to acknowledge the truth. She said to deny this is absurd and shameful. But I think the question on everybody's mind is, did Tony Blinken just commit perjury in order to assure that Israel could continue funding a genocide? Well, yes. Yes, he did. Especially considering that one of the key components of perjury is having the information and willfully knowing that you are lying to Congress anyway, despite knowing the truth, which is exactly what Blinken did. The problem is, I doubt he'll ever be held accountable. I mean, he doesn't even think he deserves to be held accountable. He just literally ignored a subpoena by Congress. And Congress is moving to introduce a resolution to hold him in contempt. But because this is the U.S. Congress, I want to be clear about something. They're never going to punish anybody for lying in order to protect Israel. Because lying to protect Israel is their business, and business is booming. Oh, but rest assured, if you or I were guilty of committing perjury while giving a testimony to Congress, oh, that's our ass. We might be going to jail. Ask Steve Bannon. But when the country's most powerful individuals commit perjury in order to allow the continuance of a genocide, well, I guess that's just another Tuesday, huh?
All the terror that the Israelis suffered at the hands of Iraq. It began in World War III.
Security camera footage shows one of the attacks, that a drone hit a warehouse of a naval base in Eilat, Israel's southern city, last night on September 25, 2024. Sirens sounded when the drone arrived at the important port of the occupation, which is a new development with the start of the aggression on Lebanon. It is unknown whether this is a new type of drone, or a new way to avoid the air defense interception process, but the Israeli Navy claimed that another drone was successfully intercepted. Meanwhile, the Islamic resistance fighters in Iraq published a video on Wednesday showing the launch of 2 drones, attacking important targets in the occupied Rishash, Eilat. The drones appeared to be the Shahed 136, sophisticated and very well known. Footage from local settlers showed a strong explosion when the drones, which came from a very distant direction, Iraq, landed there, and people rushed to run at the time of impact. According to initial of Israeli media, they reported that at least between 2 to 4 Navy Marines were injured, while Israeli troops and medical teams were on their way. This is what it meant when Israel says it is fighting on multiple fronts. The Iraqi Islamic resistance confirmed the continuation of the offensive operations against the enemy's strongholds with increasing intensity, admit responsibility for the attack on Zionist naval base in Eilat. Continuing the path of our resistance against the occupation, in support of our people in Palestine and Lebanon, and in response to Zionist massacres against civilians, including children, women and the elderly, the Iraqi Islamic Resistance statement said.
So I have said multiple times on this channel in multiple videos that I feel that something big is coming. Something big is around the corner. And it would seem like multiple members of the United States Congress are also preparing for this something big. Now, I have absolutely no idea what this something big might be, but let's not forget that multiple billionaires and these so-called elites around the same time are building these massive underground bunkers. Some of these bunkers actually have defense systems. Now, before we do get into this story, I do want to give a shout out to a channel, Truth Seeker, because I actually saw this story on his channel. He's a good guy. He replies to almost every comment. So if you do have the time, please go ahead and show him some love and check out his channel. But with that being said, going back to this very strange story, I'm reading this article from Newser. Now, multiple forms of media, news agencies are talking about this story. But again, I happen to be reading this article from Newser, which was published on September 23rd. And the title of this article happens to be Congress Suggests 28th Amendment Focuses on a Terror Attack. Very, very interesting timing. This is right before October. And we know every election year, there is an October surprise where something big happens that pretty much shakes up the election. And I feel like this October, we are going to see a very wild October surprise that's going to put everything on its head. There will absolutely be an insane event this October. And it's not just me saying that, but if you follow a lot of hints and clues from the media, they are definitely alluding that they know something will happen this October. And it's going to be absolutely insane. For instance, we have a news article from Politico where they are saying there's going to be a passing at a Trump rally on October 19th, 2024 in Florida. This was a hypothetical out of multiple theories they laid out as to events that would pause the 2024 United States presidential election. But like I said, what's coming out from Congress is very interesting timing. But continuing to read from the article, it says, lawmakers say it must be easier to quickly fill 100 or more House vacancies. That is right. There are multiple members of Congress that believe that if something were to happen to multiple members of Congress, 100 or more, at one time, they need to quickly fill those seats. Continuing to read from the article, it says, the Constitution has been amended 27 times, and a proposed 28th one has a sobering theme. A bipartisan group in Congress wants the nation to be better prepared for a mass event in D.C. Now, this is a bipartisan group, Republicans and Democrats. When these people come together, it's never good. That should be a hint right there that something is wrong here, that something is indeed being planned when we hear that these people are coming together. But continuing to read from the article, it says, the four members of Congress have proposed what they call a continuity amendment that would allow members of Congress to be quickly replaced should at least 100 seats suddenly become vacant. Now, here's the thing. There is already something like this put in place, but for these members of Congress, this is not fast enough. What is currently in place is not fast enough, and they need something quicker. The current rules are, under ordinary circumstances, an open house seat must be filed by special election, a process that can take months. In the wake of 9/11, a new law stipulates that seats must be filled within 49 days of a mass event, resulting in at least 100 vacancies per roll call. So these members of Congress, they say, yes, there is something already put in place to expedite seats being filled, but I guess with whatever's coming up, they are going to need these seats filled almost immediately. Now, it even says right here in this article what the problem is. And the problem is that even the expedited timeline of 49 days is too long in a time of national crisis, says these representatives. But my thing is, have we ever had this problem before? So why now? In times of national events before, have we ever had issues filling seats in a timely manner when it comes to Congress? So that's what makes me believe that these people know that something big is around the corner, and they are getting prepared for multiple members of Congress to either go underground, where they tell people that these members of Congress all passed away at one time, but in actuality, these people are heading underground, possibly with P. Diddy and a certain Jeffrey. You never know. But I do hope that before this something big happens, I'm able to obtain one of these panda dogs. Look at them. They are absolutely adorable. They can fake something big happening, a big event, where news and media will come out and say, oh no, all these members of Congress were all caught up in this something big. They all lost their lives. But in actuality, these members of Congress are really going underground to prepare for the real big event that's going to be taking place above. They could fake any type of event that could have this outcome. They could even fake another January 6th. So how would they go about rushing into having people fill these seats? Well, the proposed remedy under the suggested amendment, lawmakers would submit a list of 5 names of people from their own party to the governor as potential replacements in the event of a mass event. The governor would then choose a name from that list as an immediate interim appointment. So essentially, these members of Congress, they would put names in a hat. They would take this hat to the governor, and the governor would pull a name out of the hat, and that name will be the next member of Congress to fill one of these seats. More than likely, that's not how it'll happen, but that's how it'll happen in my own little world of horror. So yes, these 4 members of Congress are taking it to the rest of Congress to try to get this amendment passed. And I'm sure it'll pass because, like I said, they are preparing for this something big. And again, it's very interesting timing that they are doing this right before October. They have been using news and media to really distract us as well right before October, especially with all this Diddy stuff. And most of the public already knows how this whole Diddy case will end up. It'll end up no different than Jeffrey. But the truth is, Diddy is currently not in jail. More than likely, he's in his underground bunker as well, or on an island somewhere. Then we have these celebrities like Usher, Pink, and so forth, deleting and wiping their social media, having many people believe that something incriminating was on their social media, and they don't want the public to see it. But in actuality, this is just more of a distraction. These people eventually put their social media back on. They said they were hacked. But again, it's just to make us fall deeper into this rabbit hole and to not look as to what's actually taking place in the background. As these people, as these so-called powers that be, prepare for this big event that's coming, many members of the public are focused on Diddy. Did he do it? Did he not do it? I want to know what Congress knows. I want to know what Congress is doing. For many people, because a lot of things have been happening, a lot of bizarre events have been taking place, many people feel like a 2024 selection may not happen altogether. Now, with me, I feel like they still may select somebody, but who knows if that selection will even go all the way to inauguration. I have covered multiple times on this channel the 2024 Economist magazine cover, where I had stated they are telling us that a great merger will happen between all these countries. This is the same magazine cover where back in November of 2023, when this magazine cover was created, they let us know that Trump's opposite would be a female, well before Joe Biden had stepped down. Then we have this Politico article created back in January of 2024, giving us multiple theories just as to what may stop the 2024 presidential election. And we really have not seen this in other presidential elections, especially from news and media. They mention a surprise from China, which again alludes to a World War III. than this passing at a Trump rally where a big fight breaks out and somebody passes away on October 19th. Then there's Mother Nature wreaks havoc on the election, which could easily be weather manipulation, modification, maybe a massive earthquake seen in California, or the New Madrid fault line. Then they talk about an alien invasion, which is something in the works, which is definitely something on the table, because they have not been talking about aliens and UFOs for a reason ever since 2023. Before 2023, aliens and UFOs have been nothing but swamp gas, weather balloons, but Congress and other members of the powers that be really want us to talk about aliens and UFOs for a reason. They end the article with a digital apocalypse and so much more, and that's very true. So much more is very true because they can do absolutely anything they want to do to stop the election. If something happens to Trump, I am sure that would be the spark that would light a civil war within the United States, which would also pause the election. A lot of events would take place across the United States, a lot of violent events, which would cause a lot of these members in Congress to go into hiding as well, something that is pre-planned. So this 28th Amendment just happens to be very, very interesting timing. But in any case, thank you.
Coffee. Follow me.